Chapter 830. Fang Yan left, and Gong Sun Chi offered to walk him out. Under Qing Niao's stare, as if she was looking at a lunatic, the two walked towards the side door outside the red wall. "Are you crazy?" Before they got far, Gong Sun Chi couldn't help but complain, "Do you know what you're doing?" "I know." Challenging one of the three dragons of Hua Xia, the dragon god, Fang Yan had a calm smile on his face. Gong Sun Chi didn't like this kind of expression. In the past, Fang Yan's smile was very cunning and proud, like a fox that took advantage of others. Gong Sun Chi felt even more friendly towards this kind of smile. At this time, he looked very mysterious, and no one knew what he was thinking. He was not down to earth, and naturally made people feel distant. His smile was like a constant reminder that he was now a water overflow state master, and this was the expression of a water overflow state master: "You'll die." Gong Sun Chi stared at Fang Yan's smiling face and said fiercely. Fang Yan looked at Gong Sun Chi and asked, "You also think I'm no match for your master? Don't you know that you're no match for him? Do you still need to ask other people's feelings about this?" Fang Yan nodded and said, "Your master has been famous for a long time, and his cultivation is unfathomable. What's more terrifying is that no one has fought him for the past 10 years, and no one knows how much he has grown. Against such a master, I really don't have any chance of winning." "Then why do you still want to do this? You can choose not to do it, or you can do it later." Gong Sun Chi anxiously tried to dissuade him. It was obvious that he was really thinking about Fang Yan's safety. Fang Yan stopped, looked at Gong Sun Chi with sincere eyes, and said, "In the past, I thought the same as you. I can choose not to do it, or I can do it later. Why do something that I have no confidence in? Why do something that disregards your own safety? I'm going to get married, and I really like the woman I'm going to marry. I want to be with her every day, and we'll have several children. That's my ideal life." Gong Sun Chi didn't say anything. He just quietly waited for Fang Yan to continue. "But, I can't now," Fang Yan said with a smile. "I stood in front of a huge vat for a long time and thought about many things. There were many contradictory ideas, and those contradictory laws collided and killed each other. One side triumphed over the other, just like one country triumphed over another. I became the king of the victorious kingdom. I comprehended the heavenly Tao and stepped into the doorstep of the water overflow state. However, once you enter that realm, there's no turning back. It's just like when you become the king of a kingdom, you can no longer step down by yourself, because once you lose the protection of that position, you may be killed by the rebels. You can only brace yourself and continue forward. No matter what you encounter in front of you, you have to walk forward bravely and fearlessly." "You also know about the grudge between the dragon god and the one in my family. In the battle between the two, the one in my family suffered a crushing defeat, and because his meridians were cut, he became a cripple. I grew up with him, and almost my entire life was spent with him. I could see how miserable his life was, and I could feel how sorrowful his heart was. He ate wine every day and slept with wine. That kind of life would have been better off dead. If he had died in that battle, at least he would have maintained the illustrious reputation of the Azure Dragon. However, he didn't die, and was still stubbornly living on. When everyone mentions the Azure Dragon's name, they would sigh in regret, saying that a heavenly son of heaven was destroyed in a day, but in their hearts, they were mocking his current situation. Most people would just ignore him when they saw him. Who would care about the opinion of a cripple? Can you imagine, how did he survive such a life? The Fang family is few in number, with only one son for several generations. Back when grandfather was healthy, he had dozens of disciples, and it was considered a formidable force. Later, grandfather's legs were crippled, and most of his disciples left, never to be heard from again. There were a few who stayed, but they didn't have the ability to prop up the Fang family. After the old drunkard ascended the heavenly Tao, the Fang family's reputation changed greatly. However, when he perished and became a cripple, he would receive 10 times, 100 times more mockery and blows than before. My father was killed at the entrance of the village. I was one step too late. If I had arrived earlier, I would have been able to save him. Because of this thought, I stayed in Swallow Dock to observe mourning for my father for 3 years. I felt too guilty, and I blamed myself, but what was the old drunkard thinking? If his tendons hadn't been cut by your master, if he was still a heavenly Tao expert, would my father not have died? Would the Fong family not be in such a difficult situation? After my father died, he disappeared. According to the medical fanatic, he went to find some ice dragon's blood to replenish his meridians. I don't believe that such a thing exists in this world, but I hope that he does, because if that's the case, he will return. Otherwise, with his stubborn temper and proud character, he would rather be buried in that land of extreme cold than return. I always wanted to do something for him. Challenging the divine dragon was an arduous task. In the past, I only dared to think about it in secret, and was even too embarrassed to say it out loud. I was afraid that your master would hear me and kill me with his sword. I always thought, I don't believe that I can't catch up to you, I don't believe that you won't grow old, you won't grow weak, you won't die. That became a demon in my heart, a thorn in my side. In front of that huge vat, I understood. If I had fear in my heart, I would never be able to defeat your master. I would never be able to avenge the old drunkard. The Tao of man is the heavenly Tao. If you go against your own thoughts, then you will be going against the heavenly Tao. Not only will your cultivation level not improve, you might even regress, because you have a mental demon. So, you were able to ascend to the overflow realm because you made up your mind to challenge my master? Gong Sun Chi asked. No. Fang Yen shook his head. I was able to ascend to the overflowing state because my thoughts were clear. I understood the things that I couldn't understand before. I made my final decision on the things that had always made me waver. Of course, the reason I challenged your master was also to make my thoughts clear. If I don't do this, if I keep thinking about postponing and refusing, then I will eventually lose the courage and opportunity to challenge him. I understand. Gong Sun Chi thought for a while, then looked at Fang Yen and said, I won't give you my blessing. I understand. Fang Yen nodded. He patted Gong Sun Chi's shoulder and said, I'm already very grateful that you chased after me and told me this. But, Gong Sun Chi thought for a bit and said, I don't want you to fail either. Fang Yen squinted his eyes and smiled, then turned around and left. Clear thoughts. Gong Sun Chi looked at Fang Yan's elegant back and muttered, Master wanted to battle you because he wanted his thoughts to be clear. You came to challenge my master because you wanted your thoughts to be clear. But do you know that the way you are doing it is making it hard for my thoughts to be clear? The news that Fang Yen wanted to challenge the dragon god spread to a certain group of people in Beijing very quickly. Is that kid crazy? Why would he dare to challenge the divine dragon? A horse doesn't know what's good for him. With his mediocre skills, he dares to challenge the 3 dragons of Huaxia. He's far from it. There's going to be a good show. The heavenly Tao realm expert who destroyed the Fang family years ago, Mo Qinglong, probably won't show any mercy this time, right? There was a lot of discussion, but no one believed that Fang Yen could defeat the divine dragon and become the final winner of this battle. The Jiang family mansion. Jiang Shifu looked at his grandson, General Xing, who was sitting in front of him, and said, It seems like the news is true. A few old friends in the martial world called me, and Tigress also has some connections. That brat really went to challenge the dragon god. General Xing grinned. Grandpa, what's there to be afraid of? Isn't this good news for us? Since Fang Yen took the initiative to issue a challenge to Mr. Dragon God, only death awaits him. If Fang Yen dies or gets injured by Mr. Dragon God's hands, our Jiang family will be able to reap the benefits. Previously, the Fang family's Mo Qingdi was crippled by Mr. Dragon God after his tendons were broken, and the Fang family was bullied and humiliated. Until now, they have not recovered. If something like this happens again, it will not be anything new. Have you thought about it? Jiang Shifu looked at General Xing with a serious expression and said, Why does Fang Yen want to challenge the divine dragon? What makes him think that he can challenge the divine dragon? You've interacted with him many times. Do you think he's crazy? Or is there something wrong with his IQ? I've heard, General Xing knew that the old man in front of him was angry, so he toned down his attitude and said, Fang Yan broke through the water overflow state and became a powerhouse that can compete with the heavenly path state. If he didn't do this and didn't challenge the divine dragon, our Jiang family would have to adjust our attitude towards him. However, he's courting death by challenging Mr. Dragon. How could he be Mr. Dragon's opponent? Strangling talents is exactly what Mr. Dragon God likes to do. What if? Jiang Shifu asked. What? General Xing did not understand the meaning behind his grandfather's words. If Fang Yan defeats the divine dragon, if Fang Yan wins this battle, Jiang Shifu looked at General Xing with a sharp gaze and asked, have you thought about what the Jiang family should do when that happens? Chapter 831. General Xing looked at his grandfather with a pensive look and said, Grandfather, are you worried about Fang Yan, the threat he might bring to the Jiang family? One lives in sorrow and perishes in peace. General Shifu did not hide his thoughts as he said, try your best to think of every possibility, so that we won't panic when the time comes. If we don't understand the danger Fang Yan poses, as well as the immense influence a heavenly Dao realm expert can bring, it will be a true disaster for our Jiang family. Grandfather, even if he reaches the water overflow realm, he won't be able to live for long. You also know that he just challenged the divine dragon and lived a tough life. In a week, he will perish. When that happens, is there a need for us to worry about a dead person? Or perhaps, just as grandfather worries, Fang Yan managed to survive after defeating the divine dragon. Could he be so lawless as to unleash a massacre on our Jiang family? The Jiang family is not their Fang family. If they dare do such a thing, it will cause a stir in the entire Yan capital. How can such a responsibility be borne by a heavenly Dao realm expert? That's not the only thing I'm worried about. The Fang family doesn't just have one heavenly Dao realm expert, but two. Fang Yan is about to marry the Yi family, and the Yi family's Yuan is also a heavenly Dao realm expert. If they were to really get married, how would the Jiang family fare? General Xing said with a wry smile. Before it began, no one expected such a thing to happen. Back then, the Fang family could not withstand a single blow, and they thought that they were only devouring a sheep. But no one expected that their Fang family's heavenly Dao realm expert would appear like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. The sheep tore off its disguise and turned into a ferocious wolf that counterattacked. General Xing looked at General Shifu and said, Grandfather, you never expected such a thing to happen, right? General Shifu pondered for a long while before saying, do you have any good countermeasures? The enemy of our enemy is our friend. General Xing said in a deep voice, the arrow has been shot, and there's no turning back. Regret is unnecessary, and an apology won't be of any use. Now, our Jiang family and Fang Yan are in an irreconcilable situation. Now that things have come to this, we can only place our bets on the dragon god's side. Jiang Shifu thought for a while, then said, help me make an appointment with the dragon god, it's been hard on my life. Just tell him that I want to treat him to chives flatbread. Okay. General Xing nodded. Grandpa, I'm afraid there's one more person that you have to meet in person. Jiang Shifu looked thoughtfully at General Xing. He had lived in seclusion for many years, taking care of the flowers and plants in this courtyard. If it wasn't an important matter, he wouldn't meet anyone easily. Moreover, after so many years, the number of people he had met could be counted on one hand. General Xing should understand his habits, but he said that there was someone he had to see. What kind of person was that? Grandfather. General Xing's eyes were filled with determination as he looked at Jiang Shifu and said, we cannot lose this battle. This is very good. Jiang Shifu looked at his grandson with a gratified expression and said, I believe in you. Then I'll get to work. The general stood up and said, I've asked Mr. Dragon God to come over for some pancakes tomorrow night. He probably won't reject me. Go. Old man Jiang Shifu waved his hand and said, be careful, don't alert anyone. I understand. General Xing nodded. At this time, the Jiang family's elderly man and dragon god were to meet. If Dragon God really killed or crippled Fang Yan after the battle, it would be bad for the Jiang family's reputation. However, General Xing didn't think that this was a bad thing. If Dragon God killed or crippled Fang Yan after meeting his grandfather, how would the outside world view this matter? Yes, it would have a bad impact on the Jiang family's reputation. They might even suspect that the Jiang family was the mastermind. However, shouldn't those people be fearful of the Jiang family because of this? If they could link the Dragon God's hard work with the Jiang family, that would be the best. After Jiang Junling walked far away, the tigress returned to the elderly man. Old master. The tigress stood respectfully in front of the elderly man. Make a trip to Huacheng and meet Shangxin personally. Tell her that I miss her and ask her to visit when she has the time. Old man Jiang Shifu said. The tigress looked at old man Jiang with a surprised expression. She didn't expect him to make such a decision. Old man Jiang Shifu's expression was calm, but his voice was a little sad. He said, the Jiang family's younger generation is incompetent. The last chance to break out of this situation may lie on Shangxin alone. Yes, I will definitely tell Miss Shangxin about old master's longing. The tigress bowed and replied. However, she felt a little sour in her heart. The majestic and incomparably huge Jiang family had actually reached the stage where they needed to prepare a backup plan. You actually went to challenge Dragon God? Yi Daoling's face was full of anger as he asked directly. He didn't even invite him to take a seat and instruct the servants to pour him tea. Fang Yan stood in the living room of Yi Daoling's house and looked at the withered ginkgo tree in the courtyard. He smiled and said, yes, I didn't expect the news to spread so quickly. Fang Yan, do you know what you are doing? Yi Daoling wanted to throw the teacup in his hand at him. You are challenging Dragon God, Dragon God. I don't need to say what kind of opponent Dragon God is. You know this better than me. Also, after he defeated your senior brother Mo Qingdi decades ago, everyone in the world thought that he was the #1 expert in Huaxia. Even the mysterious black dragon wasn't his match. Why did you find such an opponent? Yi Zi sat beside her father and looked at Fang Yan with her beautiful eyes without blinking. This guy is actually an expert in the water overflow state. He was always smiling, he was cynical, and he was always beaten to death by his sister. However, he was humorous, knowledgeable, filial, and loyal. His friends were willing to die for him. He was attentive and cared for his family. He worked hard to protect his family and did not hesitate to fight to the death to protect his family. Such a man was about to become her brother-in-law. Hearing that her father's temper was out of control, Yi Zi finally came back to her senses. She hugged her father's arm and signaled him not to damage his body. Yi Zi looked at Fang Yan and said, Fang Yan, don't mind him. My dad is doing this for your own good. If it was someone else, he wouldn't be so angry. Yes, yes. Wan Jing nodded repeatedly and said, if it was me, the boss wouldn't be so angry. Yi Zi glared at Wan Jing and signaled him not to talk nonsense. Then she looked back at Fang Yan and said, you are going to marry my sister, how can you still do such a dangerous thing? If there is an accident, what will my sister do? Yi Daoling also knew that his temper was too bad. After being comforted by his daughter, his mood was much better. Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yan and said, Fang Yan, don't blame me for being too strict with you. We are a family now. Say whatever you want. There is no need to hide it like before. I always thought you were a smart person, the smartest person in the entire Swallow Dock. But I have to say that your choice this time is very unwise and disappointing. Yes, I know you entered the water overflow state, but do you think you can definitely defeat the Dragon God's hard work just because you entered the water overflow state? You have the heart to avenge the enemy. This is very good and admirable. But, can't you bear it a little longer? Wait a little longer. You have endured for so many years and waited. Why can't you wait a few days? Can't you wait a few years? You have achieved such achievements at such a young age. Your future is limitless. No one knows how far you can go in the future. What is the path after the heavenly path? What is the next realm after the water overflow state? When you find the answers to these questions, then challenge the dragon god's hard work. Isn't the success rate higher? You are playing with your life. Not only are you using your life to play with others, but you also don't care about Wenruru's happiness in the future. Now everyone in the world knows that you and Yururu are going to get married, and the invitations have been sent out. In the end, a few days before the marriage, you ran to fight with your life. It would be fine if you won. The key is that you will die if you fight with your life. At that time, what about our Ruru? Will she get married in the future? I know it's not good. Fang Yan looked at Yi Daoling and apologized sincerely. I know it's wrong. I'm sorry to many people, my family, Yi family, and the person I'm most sorry to is Wenruru, but I also have a reason to do this. What reason do you have to do this? I'm afraid that if I don't do it this time, I won't be able to do it in the future. Fang Yan said with a smile. At least, this is the time that I feel the best about myself and the time that I'm most likely to succeed. Why do you think you can defeat the #1 master of Huaxia? Based on my feelings. Fang Yan said with a smile. I don't think I can definitely win, I just feel that there is a chance of winning. Fang Yan. Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yan sharply and said, if you agree, I can find a way to help you cancel this battle. Absolutely not. Fang Yan looked at Yi Daoling and said, morale cannot be lost, so you're determined to do this? Have you discussed it with Wenruru? Does she agree with you to do such a dangerous thing? She didn't discuss it with me. The courtyard door was pushed open, and a girl in black strode in. Chapter 832. It was getting colder and colder in Yanjing. The weather forecast said that the first snow of the year would come in a few days. Of course, the weather forecast didn't specify which day it was. After all, it wasn't easy for them. Her long hair and clothes fluttered in the wind. Even if she didn't wear any makeup, people could still feel her breathtaking beauty. Yuro's temperament was very calm, but her face gave people a feeling of coldness. She was like an iceberg, beautiful, but always made people worry that she was cold to the bone and not close to the people. Of course, compared with her, Qinitian was even less close to the people. Qinitian was very warm, but too warm. Her beauty was like the sun in the hottest days, with millions of golden rays, without any concealment, and without mercy, unscrupulously burning the earth and people's eyes. But, why did Yuro come at this time? Seeing Yuro coming, Yezi quickly ran to greet her, took the initiative to hold Yuro's arm, and said with a smile, Sister, you're here. I knew you would come. Only you can stop Fang Yan. Yi Daoling also grinned, looked at Yuro and said, Ro is here. Did Yezi call you? Quickly persuade Fang Yan not to do such a stupid thing. Isn't it good to have a good birthday? There is no need to make things difficult for yourself. Yuro walked straight to Fang Yan, looked at Fang Yan and asked, you want to challenge the dragon god? Fang Yan looked straight into Yuro's eyes, nodded and said, yes, I have to fight. Why didn't you discuss it with me in advance? I was afraid you wouldn't agree. Why 7 days before the wedding? I was afraid I would die. Yuro stopped talking, and her beautiful eyes stared at Fang Yan without blinking, as if she wanted to see how many hairs there were on his face. Go back with me. Yuro said expressionlessly. Okay. Fang Yan nodded. So, Yuro took Fang Yan's hand and turned to leave. Fang Yan smiled at Yezi and followed Yuro out of the Yi family's courtyard. Yi Daoling and Yezi were stunned. Yi Daoling looked at Yezi and asked, just like that? Just like that. Yezi nodded. Just like that? Yes. Why did they leave? Is the problem solved? I don't know. It should be solved. Sister Ro is here. According to her character, she will definitely not agree to this matter. Besides, Fang Yan can't beat Sister Ro. At most, he can break his legs. Yi Daoling rubbed the rim of his cup in annoyance and said, even if you want to leave, shouldn't you tell me? No matter what, I'm still their elder. Aren't they not behaving like juniors at all? Yi nodded fiercely and echoed, yes, it's too much. Yi Daoling looked at Yi with a face full of smiles and said, my own daughter is still the best. It seems that only us, father and daughter, will be eating at home today. I'll ask the kitchen to make a few more dishes. Let's drink the remaining half bottle of Maotai. I can't bear to drink it when you are not at home. Dad, I can't accompany you for lunch today. Yezi said with embarrassment, I want to go back to Swallow Dock. Ancestor called me yesterday and said that she misses me. She asked me to go back to see her. I also want to see whether Sister Ruer has intercepted Fang Yan. How about letting Wan Jing eat with you at home? I'm willing to eat with the chief. Wan Jing tried hard to force a smile on his face and said, but Yezi, it's not safe to drive back alone, right? How about I drive her back to Swallow Dock? Get lost. Yi Daoling slammed the cup on the tea table and waved his hand. Get lost. Dad, I will go back to accompany Ancestor. I will say hello to Ancestor for you. Yezi stuck out her tongue and ran outside quickly. Wan Jing looked at Yi Daoling carefully and said, you are the chief. You told me to get lost. I can't disobey the order, can I? After that, she ran outside like a rabbit. Yi Daoling looked at the empty house and suddenly felt a little lonely. He thought about it and grabbed the landline next to him to call his wife. Come back after work at noon. The child is not at home. Let's go out to eat something good. Yi Ro drove, and Fang Yan sat in the passenger seat. Yi Ro didn't speak, and Fang Yan also remained silent. There was a song playing in the car, a song that sounded a little sad. If it's too late before dark I am going to forget your eyes, spend a lifetime, can't finish a dream, waking up from a dream, this life is absurd. South Mountain, North Autumn is sad, South Mountain has a pile of grain, South Wind whispers, North Sea has a tombstone, this song is very nice. Fang Yan broke the silence and said with a smile. Although it sounds sad, the feelings in it are very sincere. There is a couple in love. The man lives in North Sea and the woman lives in South Mountain. They are in a long-distance relationship. One day, the man told the woman that he likes someone else and wants to break up with the woman. The woman was heartbroken, but she still accepted the arrangement. The man didn't fall in love with another woman. He was just sick. It was a genetic disease in his family. At this time, it was difficult for him to even breathe. Few of his family lived past 30 years old, and it was difficult for him to break this curse. He was about to die. He didn't want to drag that woman down because he felt that he couldn't give him happiness. Yi Ro said calmly as if she was telling a story. Of course, she was indeed telling a story. And then? Fang Yan was attracted by Yi Ro's story and asked. There is no then. Yi Ro said. Fang Yan was anxious and said, how can you do this? How can there be a story without an ending? Aren't you a eunuch? Are you touched? Yi Ro ignored Fang Yan's doubt and asked. Yes. Fang Yan nodded. I am touched. That man is too great. What about that woman? Yi Ro asked. Woman? Fang Yan thought for a while and said, he has a woman who loves him very much, and Fang Yan couldn't continue. He understood the deeper meaning of Yi Ro's story. Do you think that woman will be grateful after knowing the truth? Will she thank that man for hiding it from her? Will she thank that man for letting her go? Gentle. Afraid that I would be worried and would challenge the dragon god without discussing with me. Worried that I would be a widow, so he specially chose the date of the battle 7 days before the wedding. Shouldn't I be moved like that woman? I didn't do it for you. That man didn't do it to make that woman feel touched. Maybe he thought that was the way he could give her happiness. I just thought that if I couldn't come back, you would still have a chance. A chance to marry someone else. Fang Yan remained silent. He couldn't have an answer to such a question. Is this the Yi Ro in your eyes? I know you won't choose that, but I hope you can choose that. Fang Yan said in a low voice. Since the battle with the dragon god was a foregone conclusion, there were some things that needed to be clarified. I have a reason to fight, but you also have an excuse to give up. I know there are some things that you aren't looking forward to, but standing in my shoes, it doesn't mean that I won't do it just because you don't look forward to it. Ka-cha! Yi-Ro suddenly turned the steering wheel, and the car sped towards the wheat field by the side of the road. When they reached the depths of the wheat field, Yi-Ro slammed on the brakes, and the car came to a screeching halt. Yi-Ro turned to look at Fang Yan and said, I'm also at the Heavenly Tao realm. I can completely understand why you made such a decision. The arrow is knocked on the bow, and it has to be fired. But shouldn't you discuss it with me before making such a decision? You said that you didn't discuss it with me beforehand because you were worried that I wouldn't agree to it. But even if I didn't agree to it, since you had already decided to do it, all I could do was support you. I wouldn't let you give up, because I knew that you definitely wouldn't back out. Since I was certain that you wouldn't back out, why did you say such words to dampen your resolve? You chose to have the duel 7 days before our wedding. If you were to unfortunately die in battle, I wouldn't need to marry a dead person. Yi-Ro would still be a free person. Yi-Ro's eyes were filled with intense sorrow. She looked at Fang Yan and said, my body is free, but what about my heart? Fang Yan, if you were to die in battle, do you think I would still be able to walk away without any worries? Fang Yan, let me tell you my stance. Human Tao follows the Heavenly Tao, and the Heavenly Tao is the Tao of the heart. I won't stop you from fighting the Divine Dragon with your life. If this can make one's thoughts clear, then I have no choice but to do so. Just like how I couldn't sever my ties when I climbed the Heavenly Tao, I'd rather not step into the Heavenly Tao because my ties are with you. If you are injured in this battle, then we can fight again after you return to recuperate. If you were to die in this battle, I'll wear white and challenge the Divine Dragon to avenge you. If I win, then the Divine Dragon will die. If I lose, then I'll die with you. Although we're not married yet, we're already engaged. From the day you went to the Yi family to send the betrothal gifts, we're a family. Life and death are bound together, a promise made to my son. Holding my son's hand, we'll grow old together. These words are not written to be read, not spoken, but to be fulfilled with the rest of my life. If you're alive, I'll be your wife. If you're dead, I'll still be your wife. If you're alive, we'll work together to revitalize the Fang family. If you're dead, I'll take care of grandpa and mother for you. Except for Fang Yan, no other man can enter my eyes. Chapter 833. If you are injured in this battle, then I will wait for you to come back and recuperate before fighting again. If you die in this battle, I will wear a white robe and challenge the dragon god to avenge you. With such a loving and capable wife, what else can I hope for in life? Fang Yan was moved to tears. He opened his arms and wanted to hug the torturous little goblin, Yi-Ro, into his arms. Fang Yan's body seemed to have encountered an invisible qi wall. His head was bounced off by the qi wall, but his body couldn't get close to Yi-Ro at all. Fang Yan looked at Yi-Ro, who was close at hand but difficult to approach, and said with a smile, Ro, what are you doing? Come, let your husband hug you. But I am still very angry. Yi-Ro said while looking at the wheat sprouts in the wilderness. Those wheat sprouts were shivering in the cold wind, and so was Fang Yan's body. Fang Yan felt the danger and looked at the woman who was about to become his wife with vigilance. He asked in a low voice, then I will let you calm down. Okay. Yi-Ro agreed without any hesitation and didn't beat around the bush at all. It was as if he didn't hear Fang Yan's words at all and was just testing the waters. Ha ha ha, Ro, I am just joking with you. Before Fang Yan finished his sentence, Yi-Ro didn't seem to move, but a majestic aura emitted from her body. It was like a sudden explosion of energy bomb, and Fang Yan, who was unprepared, was directly blown away. Clang! The door swayed, and because it couldn't bear the gravity, it looked like it was about to break away from the car. Fang Yan's body tumbled in the air, and then suddenly stopped in the air, violating the principle of free fall. It was as if someone hung a hydrogen balloon on top of his head, or he was stepping on a pair of flaming wheels. His long robe fluttered, and the hem of his robe fluttered in the cold wind. Fang Yan's hair hadn't been trimmed for a while, and now it looked a bit long. They flapped their cheeks haphazardly, covering the left half of the eye. At this moment, Fang Yan really had the cold and arrogant demeanor of a peerless expert. Of course, he was a master of a master. Yi Ro unfastened her seatbelt and jumped out of the open window. Her feet landed lightly on the thick roof of the car. Fang Yan saw Yi Ruru chasing after them. Obviously, she didn't want to give up. She said hurriedly, "Ruru, let's go back and fight. It's not good to fight and kill in public, right?" Yi Ro ignored Fang Yan and punched out. An invisible mass of air shrouded Fang Yan. Fang Yan kicked out in the air, and there was a violent collision of air currents in the air. The sizzling sound was incessant, as if something was being burned. However, there were no sparks in the air that could be seen with the naked eye. In the distance, there was the sound of gas bursting. A big pit was blown up in the wheat field, and a large area of green wheat sprouts was covered with black soil. It seemed that they would never show up again. The first punch was just a test. When Fang Yan kicked away the mass of air, Yi Ro stretched out her hand and pulled the Dragon Striker whip from her waist. The whip was like a long snake. It swung in the air one wave after another, and it curled toward Fang Yan's body. Fang Yan knew how terrifying Yi Ro's whip was. His body, which had stopped in the air, rose again. A cold wind blew, and his body moved with the wind. He pounced toward Yi Ro's inner core at a speed that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. Clatter! The sound of firecrackers rang out. It was caused by the long whip tearing the air. Yi Ro shook her right wrist, and the long whip in her hand spun back. The tip of the long whip seemed to have eyes. It hissed and bit toward Fang Yan's back. Fang Yan felt a chill run down his back. Even if his palm hit Yi Ro, he would be pierced by her whip. Moreover, he didn't dare to hit Yi Ro at all. Therefore, he turned 180 degrees in the air and gave up on attacking Yi Ro with the cloud-expelling palm. Instead, he reached out to grab the tail of the long whip. The tip of the long whip landed in Fang Yan's palm, but he felt a heat flow from his back. His qi and blood were tumbling in his body, and his organs were almost displaced. With a muffled groan, his body was like a rocket that had failed to launch, quickly smashing towards the ground. Plop! Fang Yan's body crashed heavily into the wheat field. With the spot where he fell as the center, the wheat sprouts and soil within a radius of tens of meters were sent flying by the irresolvable force. It was fine if he didn't move, but once he did, it shocked everyone. This was the power of the heavenly Tao realm. After Yi Ro sent Fang Yan flying with a slap, her body flew horizontally again. Her feet returned to her original position on the roof. It was as if she hadn't moved at all. "Don't think that I'll show mercy just because you don't fight back," Yi Ro said coldly. Half of Fang Yan's body was in the soil. He tried his best to raise his head, wiped the soil off his face, and spat out the mud in his mouth. Looking at the lofty Yi Ro, he said with a smile, "How can a man hit his wife? Vent your anger. Even if you beat me to death, I won't do anything to you. You beat me in the past too," Yi Ro said. "Yeah. At that time, you weren't my wife yet," Fang Yan said with a self-righteous expression. "I didn't know whose wife you would become. You bullied me, so I naturally fought back. A man can be beaten to death by his wife, but how can he be beaten to death by someone else's wife?" Yi Ro sneered and said, "Then I'll let you experience the true power of the heavenly Tao realm." Yi Ro flicked the whip in her hand, and the soft whip that could be used as a belt turned into an indestructible spear. Due to the immense force injected into the spear trembled violently. It was like a snake that was unwilling to be at the mercy of others. The spearhead buzzed as it darted forward again and again, in a bid to escape the terrifying woman's control. The spear's shaft was enveloped in a layer of white haze. The white haze turned green, red, and deep purple. The spear in Yi Ro's hand looked like it was about to burn. Yi Ro held the spear in one hand as she stretched out her other hand's slender middle finger to gently flick the end of the spear. Bang! A soft sound was heard. When the spear left her hand, a shocking scene appeared. It formed a purplish-red trajectory in the air. The trajectory was like a smear of mud in midair. Even after the spear left, it didn't dissipate. Sizzle! The spear became the source of incinerating everything. The surrounding air was swept over by it before being burned. The wheat sprouts on the ground, the black soil that maintained the wheat sprouts, the rocks that were wrapped in the black soil, and the ugly and innocent earthworms were swept over like moths to a flame before vanishing instantly. Not even a puff of white smoke could be seen. Skyfire ablaze. This was the true power of the heavenly Tao realm. It was the ultimate power of the world, or it could be said that they shouldn't even exist in this world. They should be weapons in the hands of sky gods, the will-o'-the-wisps of hell, a taboo for humans. However, a group of humans had broken the barrier and personally obtained this taboo power that came from a foreign land. The spear was silent. It didn't need to make any sound. However, no one could ignore its existence. This was because it was like a comet with a gigantic tail. It was coming at Fang Yan with an unstoppable might that could incinerate everything. It wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Fang Yan sensed danger as his flesh tensed up. Every hair on his body seemed to stand on end. Although the spear had yet to reach him, Fang Yan already felt like he was being burned by an inferno. The heat wave hit him in the face, and the hair on his face and head gave off a burnt smell. This woman. Fang Yan cursed through gritted teeth. This woman must be crazy. How could she use such a killer move? Is she planning to murder her husband? Fang Yan was very worried that he wouldn't die at the hands of the divine dragon, but at the hands of his future wife, Yi Ro. The Taiji heart that had been silent for a long time began to spin once again. The black and white Taiji fishes spun crazily before turning into a transparent crystal. On the surface, the crystal didn't seem to move at all, as though it had solidified. But in fact, its motion had been upgraded, turning into the motion of dark matter. Dark matter was a type of matter that was smaller than electrons and photons. It didn't carry any electric charge and wouldn't interfere with electrons. It could pass through electromagnetic waves and gravitational fields. It was an important part of the universe. The density of dark matter was very low, but the quantity was huge. Therefore, its total mass was very large. It represented 84.5% of the matter in the universe. Of which, the matter visible to humans only accounted for less than 10% of the total mass. In scientific terms, this was dark matter freely moving within. But in the eyes of martial arts practitioners, this was a sign that the body's potential had been developed to the limit. The cyclone had become a body of energy. It had become a tangible energy gate that could continuously extract energy. Fang Yan's knees were slightly bent, his hands were spread out, and his feet were drawing circles on the ground. He displayed the invincible drunken crane riding the wind to the extreme. His body had already turned into an illusory shadow. The shadow became fainter and fainter until it was almost transparent. The long purplish-red trail of the spear pierced through the shadow, leaving a colorful trail in the middle of the shadow. From afar, the trajectory of the spear through the air and through the transparent shadow looked like a beautiful picture of a spear piercing through a heart. Chapter 834. Although Wan Jing and Yi were a step behind, they quickly caught up. Wan Jing drove while Ye's eyes kept searching. Ahead. Their car is in the wheat field. Yi shouted as she pointed at the car in the wheat field. They're fighting. They're fighting. Yi shouted even louder as she pointed at Fang Yan and Yi Ro who were flying in the air. Wan Jing had already seen Fang Yan and Yi Ro. As he drove the car over, he answered Yi, I saw it. They're really fighting. Let's stand further away. Wan Jing stopped the car far away and looked at the purplish-red rainbow that appeared in the sky. He said with his mouth agape, it's over. Your sister has used a killer move. Is this move very powerful? Yi didn't know much about martial arts, but she could still sense the murderous aura from afar. She felt her body tense up and her heart beating violently. She would have such a feeling when watching horror movies, but it was obvious that this wasn't a horror movie. The scene of Fang Yan and Yi Rou fighting in the wheat field was still very beautiful. Impressive. Wan Jing nodded solemnly. There's a rainbow. What's its name? I don't know. Wan Jing knew that he had been despised by Yi. He explained with a flushed face, although I don't know its name, I know that this move must be very powerful. Think about it. How can a Heavenly Dao Realm expert's killer move not be powerful? Yi nodded and asked worriedly, don't tell me my sister really killed Fang Yan? How is that possible? Wan Jing grinned and said, Fang Yan is your sister's man. How can she kill him? She wouldn't be happy even if others wanted to kill her. You sure aren't worried at all, Yi said with a roll of her eyes. Then why did she use a killer move on Fang Yan? It's to feed him a move, Wan Jing said. What do you mean feed him a move? It's sparring practice. It's to let Fang Yan familiarize himself with the might of the Heavenly Dao realm and the various possible attacks, Wan Jing said with a smile. He really wasn't worried at all. This group of brothers had watched Fang Yan and Yi Rou grow up, and it was also this group of brothers who had watched them get together. After loving and killing each other for so many years, their feelings were much more intense than ordinary people's. Yi Rou was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She was dedicated to Fang Yan. How could she kill Fang Yan at this moment? I see. Yezi nodded and said, do you mean that my sister won't kill Fang Yan no matter what? Of course, Wan Jing said. Unless there's only one possibility. What possibility? Yezi was a little nervous again. Wan Jing looked at Yi doubtfully and said, if Fang Yan doesn't resist, or if he can't resist, then the killing move might really kill him. Ouch! Leaf exclaimed. Wan Jing, hurry up and stop them. Don't let them fight anymore. Wan Jing wore a bitter look and said, you want me to mediate a fight between two Heavenly Dao realm experts? Indeed, a woman's heart is the most vicious. Who are you calling a woman? You are the woman. You don't even dare to mediate a fight. Just as Wan Jing and Yezi had seen, the spear that was manifested from the whip flew across the sky, pulling out a purplish-red rainbow in the air. The rainbow was like colored powder smeared on glass. It looked like it wouldn't disappear anytime soon. There was a strong charred smell in the air. It was the smell of air, wheat sprouts, black soil, and rocks being incinerated. Although it was difficult to even see their corpses being incinerated. The flaming spear pierced through the translucent body, as though it had pierced through Fang Yan's heart. Then, the spear kept moving forward, and the huge thrust supported it to fly to a place far, far away. Fang Yan's body vanished from the spot, as though he had been incinerated by the flaming spear. However, there wasn't any horror in Yi Rou's eyes. Her body remained standing on the roof of the carriage. The cold winds howled and her long hair fluttered. She looked like a witch that could destroy the world at any moment. Strange ripples appeared in the place where Fang Yan had just disappeared. Then, a huge cyclone appeared in the air. The cyclone became slower and slower, turning into a transparent figure. As the speed of the cyclone slowed down, the figure became clearer and clearer. Fang Yan appeared again. It was very magical, and it looked very strange. Fang Yan seemed to have gone to another time and space to hide for a while. After the danger passed, he came back. Fang Yan's body floated in the air. His feet didn't touch the dust on the ground. He was handsome, confident and elegant. There was a faint smile on his face. It was as if he had just returned from a perfect vacation. Fang Yan looked at Yi Rou on the roof and said, this is the power of the Great Desolation and the most primitive power in the world. It's invincible and invincible. It can devour and incinerate everything it encounters. I thought it was just a legend. I didn't expect it to be real. The water overflow state is also very good. Yu-ro raised her chin slightly, looking very proud. At least you're good at running away. Fang Yan laughed out loud and said, I've been made fun of by my wife. Then I'll show you what the real water overflow state is. When Fang Yan spoke, he had become transparent in an instant. Yu-ro quickly turned around and slapped out. Their palms collided in mid-air, producing a dull sound. It turned out that when Fang Yan spoke, he had already changed his position. Before he finished his words, he had already launched an attack on Yu-ro from behind. Crack! Crack! The two of them were fighting more fiercely. It's so exciting, Yu-ro said excitedly. Wan Jing nodded and said, yes. Half an hour later. They're all so powerful. Wan Jing nodded and said, yes. 1 hour later. Have they finished fighting? Wan Jing shook his head and said, no. 2 hours later. Haven't they finished fighting yet? Wan Jing shook his head and said, no. Go back to sleep. I'll call you when they're done. 3 hours later. Yu-ro opened her sleepy eyes and asked, what's wrong? They're done, Wan Jing said. Oh. Yu-ro leaned back on the chair and fell asleep again. We're going back, Wan Jing said. Yu-ro looked outside and was shocked. She said, wow, they're so powerful. They destroyed a wheat field in the field. Wan Jing opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. Yu-ro was still driving. Fang Yan's body slumped in the passenger seat. I can't bear to hit you, Fang Yan said in a weak voice. Yu-ro ignored him and drove with a serious face. I mean it. I can't bear to hit you, Fang Yan emphasized again. By the time the group returned to Swallow Dock, lunchtime had long passed, and it would be time for dinner in a while. When Fang Yan returned home, Yu-ro followed him to the Fang family's house. Wan Jing and Yu-ro didn't hesitate and followed them. Lu Wan looked at Yu-ro as if she was her future daughter-in-law. She took Yu-ro's hand and asked her why she came back so late and if she had had lunch. Yu-ro said no, so Lu Wan went to the kitchen and asked the servants to cook. Fang Yan touched the bleeding wound on the corner of his mouth and wanted to cry. He was injured so badly. Didn't his mother see it? Was she really his real mother? The future mistress wanted to eat, so the chef's speed was first class. She made some home-cooked dishes and a pot of rice. The four of them were so hungry that they gobbled up the food. Wan Jing had just finished his third bowl of rice when the pheasant and mushroom soup was served. Only after everyone drank another bowl of soup could they be considered truly satisfied. Wan Jing took a tissue and wiped his mouth. He looked at Fang Yan and said, I have to go back to deal with something. He looked at Yu-ro and asked, do you want to go with me? Yu-ro glanced at Yu-ro and said, sister, I'll go back to talk with the old ancestor. After that, they bade farewell to Lu Wan and left. Fang Yan looked at Yu-ro and Yu-ro also looked at Fang Yan. Lu Wan looked at Fang Yan and Yu-ro and seemed to suddenly think of something. She said, I also have an appointment with your aunt to discuss the wedding. You two have a rest. I'll go to talk with my aunt. After that, she left with a little girl. Now, there were only Fang Yan and Yu-ro in the living room. Fang Yan looked at Yu-ro and said, don't you have a rest? Yu-ro stood up and said, come here. Okay. Fang Yan nodded and stood up. Yu-ro pushed open the door of Fang Yan's room. After Fang Yan passed by her, she closed the door and locked it. Yu-ro stood at the door and said to Fang Yan, go take a bath. Okay. Fang Yan nodded again. He didn't dare to resist because he was afraid that Yu-ro would beat him again. When he walked to the door of the bathroom, he suddenly came to his senses. He stared at Yu-ro and said hesitantly, Ro, it's not good. It's still early and my mom may come back at any time. How about we wait a little longer? Yu-ro looked at him expressionlessly and said, I said take a bath. Okay, okay. If you are in a hurry, we can close the curtains. Fang Yan trotted into the bathroom. Idiot. A charming smile appeared on Yi Ro's face. Chapter 835. Indulge in the night, tell me it's hard to find you, turning back is a dream, still passive, escape, stare at you, but deeply annoyed, ah, Fang Yen coughed violently, and water poured into his mouth. Fang Yen took a quick shower with a little joy in his heart. He used a towel to wipe his hair and the water stains on his body. Then, he walked out of the bathroom in clean pajamas. Yi Ro sat on the bed, looking at him with a strange look, with a rare shyness on her face. Get on the bed, Yi Ro said. Okay. Fang Yen answered, moving to the bed with small steps, climbed on the bed with his butt up, and then closed his eyes, lying on the bed with his body spread out. Lying on the bed, some lewd pictures came to his mind, and a dot appeared under the word, big, which became, 2. Fang Yen felt a little embarrassed, thinking, how can I do this? But then he thought, this is what a real man should do, if not, Yi Ro must think there's something wrong with me. Turn over and lie on your stomach, Yi Ro said. Okay. Fang Yen was about to change his position. When he was about to turn over, he suddenly felt this behavior was a little inappropriate. He could love endlessly, but he couldn't accept such humiliation. Fang Yen lay back down. He looked at Yi Ro timidly and said, why don't we just lie down? You can lie on top. You must lie on your stomach. Yi Ro's attitude was very tough. I'm not used to that, you'll get used to it. Fang Yen was angry and shouted, Yi Ro, I'm telling you, although I don't want to hit you, it doesn't mean I can't beat you, I'm a man, and I've given up my pride and self-esteem to let you lie on top, but you're still not satisfied. You want me to lie on my stomach, why do you want me to lie on my stomach? What can you do? Apply medicine, Yi Ro looked at Fang Yen as if looking at a lunatic, and said these 2 words softly. Fang Yan's body instantly stiffened, and he immediately closed his eyes. However, when she thought of how Yi Wenru was still staring at her from the side of the bed, she closed her eyes. Wasn't it the legendary act of burying one's head in the sand? Thus, Fang Yen opened his eyes again. Fang Yen bravely looked into Yi Wen's eyes and said, I know you're applying medicine. But can't I apply it while I'm lying down? The palm I used to hit you was on your back, Yi Ro said expressionlessly. Fang Yen felt that he was really stupid. How could he think of anything else? Yi Ro was his fiancée, a woman who would soon become his wife. No matter how impatient she was, it was impossible for her to get on him at this moment. Of course, it was impossible for him to do such a thing. So, Fang Yen turned over and exposed his back to Yi Ro. Yi Ro smeared the brown ointment on her palm, and then gently rubbed it on the spot where the blood clotted on Fang Yen's back. After applying the ointment evenly, she began to massage the clotted blood with her palm. There was a cyan light flashing in the middle of her palm, and a scorching warm current flowed on Fang Yan's back. Fang Yen felt a burning pain on his skin. He knew that Yi Ro was using her internal force to help him improve blood circulation and remove blood clots to repair the damage to his internal tissues. This woman didn't hold back when she hit him, and she didn't hold back when she treated him. If you use a little more force, I won't have to fight against the dragon god this time, Fang Yen said with a smile. If I use a little more force, you won't have the chance to fight against the dragon god anymore, Yi Ro said. Fang Yen covered his head in the pillow, smiled shyly, and said, I know you don't want to do it. Crack, Yi Ro suddenly slapped him, and a dislocated bone on Fang Yan's back was reset. Ouch, Fang Yen cried out in pain. Anything can happen, Yi Zichen said. Yi Ro's palm continued to massage the injured spot on Fang Yan's back, and there was a gentle smile on her lips that Fang Yen couldn't see. This time, I believe you. Fang Yen lay there and didn't dare to move. I didn't do my best, Yi Ro said softly. I know. Fang Yen said with certainty, although you've tried very hard, you don't have killing intent or fighting spirit in your heart. So it's hard for you to use your full strength. I have killing intent, but I also have fighting spirit. So, he's a very scary opponent, Fang Yen said in a low voice. Fang Yan, Yi-Ro said softly. If you really want to, what am I thinking? I'm not thinking anything, Fang Yan quickly denied. This was too scary. Could it be that this woman had guessed his thoughts? Crack, another spine on Fang Yan's back was restored by Yi-Ro. Feng Mountain, also known as Wind Mountain, was located in the Red Canyon far away from Yanjing. Apart from the maple trees all over the mountain, there was also the sandstorm from the north. Feng Mountain was the first stronghold to stop the sandstorm from invading Yanjing City. No one lived here, and there were only a few tourists. Occasionally, a few backpackers came to enjoy the scenery of the Red Canyon. When they set up camp and prepared to cook, they found that a thick layer of sand quickly fell into the pot as soon as they put it on the fire. Unable to hold on, they packed their bags and fled in panic. Feng Mountain was more lively today because someone was going to fight here. Ever since Fang Yan went to challenge the Dragon God, the news that both sides had agreed to fight in 7 days at Feng Mountain had spread. Many people had come here in advance to survey the terrain and find out the truth. Some people started setting up early. They drove their cars, prepared their tents, and settled down in a place with a beautiful view. Some people tried their best to climb, guessing which slope or which peak Fang Yan and the Dragon God would fight on. After all, Feng Mountain was so big and stretched for hundreds of kilometers. If they were too far away, they would miss the exciting duel. Most people gathered at the foot of the mountain and waited until they confirmed the location of the duel between Fang Yan and the Dragon God before approaching. Most of the people who knew about the duel were influential figures in Yanjing City. Their circle was small, but there were many people. Everyone knew each other, so it was common to see such a scene. Hey, third brother, you're here too. What's up? Who do you bet on? I bet on the Dragon God. Young Master Zhang, come here. Try this red wine I brought. I know you like it. I'm sure you'll be satisfied. 3 twos, I bet 3 twos. Why are you betting on a pair of kings? Are you stupid? Have you figured out who's the landlord here? Feilai Peak. This was the loneliest and steepest peak in Feng Mountain. It was high and dangerous, and there was almost no road. It was said that several groups of mountaineering enthusiasts wanted to conquer Feilai Peak, but they were all conquered by it. After a life was lost, those people finally gave up on this place with all kinds of legends. Of course, such road conditions couldn't stop Fang Yan and the Dragon God's hard life. The person accompanying Fang Yan was Yi-Ro. Originally, he wanted to come alone, but after Yi-Ro glanced at him, he immediately understood what she meant. Maybe it was because the wedding day was approaching, but they were getting along better and better. Fang Yan felt that he understood Yi-Ro better and better. In the past, he only knew that Yi-Ro would beat him up when she was unhappy. Now he knew that Yi-Ro might beat him up whether she was happy or not, so, Fang Yan took the initiative to invite Yi-Ro. Yi-Ro nodded and agreed readily. The Dragon God's hard life was accompanied by his disciple, Gongsun Qi. On one side was his master, and on the other side was his savior. Gongsun Qi was most unwilling to see this duel. Even though they had already arrived at the venue, the way he looked at Fang Yan still made Fang Yan feel a strong, pleading. His eyes could speak, and he was telling Fang Yan, stop fighting, go back. Go back to your own home, find some vegetables, and fight as you want, abuse as you want. Fang Yan felt that Gongsun Qi was really his good brother. Fang Yan was dressed in white, which was his special request. Because he liked Shimen Chue Shue and Gulong's wuxia novels. No matter which door he was in, since it was snowing, it was more appropriate to wear white. In Fang Yan's mind, Shimen Chue Shue must wear white. If he wore black, yellow, red, or purple, it would not be worthy of such a cool name. The Dragon God's hard life was still dressed in a gray robe. When Fang Yan first saw him, he was wearing the same clothes, and now he was still wearing the same clothes, as if he had never bought a new set of clothes. His body was skinny, and his hands were folded in his sleeves. Standing on the top of the mountain, he looked like he would be blown away by a gust of wind. Gong Sun Chi walked in front of Fang Yan, looked at Fang Yan and said, "You've decided, you won't change your mind?" Fang Yan patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "I can understand how you feel, but you should also know that when we last met, I had already made up my mind." The dragon god saw this scene and sighed, "My disciple, Dragon God's hard life, is still not as good as Green Dragon Mo Qiandi's disciple. This duel is inevitable, why say so much?" Fang Yan glanced at the dragon god's hard life and said, "Gong Sun Chi is just more sentimental than I am. He is willing to care about the fate of others, but I care more about my own fate." "You sure know how to defend him," the dragon god said with a smile. His gaze fell on Yi Rou, who was beside Fang Yan, and said, "I heard that Fang Yan is going to marry Miss Yi, one family with two heavenly laws. This is something that has never been heard of for hundreds of years. It will definitely be a great story in the future." Yi Rou looked at the dragon god's hard eyes and said in a cold voice, "If you kill him, I will definitely kill you." Chapter 836. If you kill him, I will definitely kill you. Yi Rou's words were sonorous and powerful. It did not make sense to make such a threat before the duel. However, according to Yi Rou's usual character and style of doing things, it was not strange at all. Besides, the last time the Divine Dragon battled with the Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi, it was a friendly duel, but the Divine Dragon broke the tendons of the Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi's hand, making him wish he was dead. Who asked this old fellow to have such a record? The mountain winds howled and sand filled the sky. Hearing Yi Rou's words, the Divine Dragon's expression did not change, nor did he show any anger. He looked at Fang Yan with a smile and said, "You have a good wife, it is a great blessing in life." Fang Yan nodded and said, "You don't have to be envious, it's useless to be envious anyway. At your age, it's probably not easy for you to find a wife, right?" "Ha ha ha," the Divine Dragon laughed out loud and said, "That makes sense, it really makes sense. At my age, it's probably not easy for me to find a wife, let alone a good wife in the heavenly Dao realm." The husband and wife ganged up to bully his master, an old man who had never even married a wife in his life. This was unacceptable to Gong Sun Chi. He could not be angry at his savior, Fang Yan, so he targeted Fang Yan's wife, Yi Rou. "See, straight men are so cute. What a joke. If Fang Yan is killed by my master, will you be able to avenge Fang Yan? Why do you think you are better than Fang Yan?" Gong Sun Chi sneered. When he spoke, the direction of his nostrils indicated the target of his attack. Yi Rou glanced at Gong Sun Chi and said, "What right do you have to speak? What do you mean? If you were slightly more powerful, would you still need your master to fight Fang Yan personally? Yi Rou, do you dare to accept my challenge?" Gong Sun Chi gnashed his teeth, wishing he could cut Yi Rou into two pieces right there and then. He really felt pity for Fang Yan. Such a good man, handsome, charming, humorous, skilled in martial arts, and loyal, how could he fall into the hands of such a woman? How could he be happy in this life? "I dare not," Yi Rou refused on the spot. "I don't compete with people of lower realms." Gong Sun Chi drew his sword on the spot, ready to fight to the death with Yi Rou. Gong Sun Chi. The dragon god tried his best to stop him. "Stop messing around. Master, she's going too far." Gong Sun Chi roared with a red face and neck. "What's wrong with being ridiculed because your cultivation isn't good enough? Only by knowing shame and courage can one become a master of a generation." The dragon god worked hard and did not hesitate to stab his disciple in the chest. Gong Sun Chi really wanted to go down the mountain. There was no way to continue watching this fight. The dragon god looked at Gong Sun Chi and said, "When you reach the top, all the mountains are small. The most important thing is the process of climbing. When you reach the top, there is no one around you, no one to talk to. How lonely and helpless will that be? When you can't see the stars and the moon in front of you, how will you have the direction to chase? How will you have the motivation to chase? It's a happy thing to have an opponent to defeat and surpass. How boring is it to have never been defeated in life?" Gong Sun Chi's face turned serious, he bowed respectfully to his master and said, Master, your disciple understands. Your disciple will definitely focus on cultivation and climb to the heavenly realm in the future. The dragon god nodded to his disciple and said, You have the talent, it's only a matter of time for you to climb to the heavenly realm, but you lack training and the hardships of putting yourself at death's door. This will hinder your climbing to the heavenly realm. The dragon god pointed at Fang Yan and said, As the saying goes, the children of the poor become responsible early. Although Fang Yan has experienced many setbacks and challenges, it has honed his temperament and aura, that's why he entered the realm at such a young age. You are my disciple, this helped you in the early stages, allowing you to improve quickly and have a solid foundation. But it also hurt you in the later stages, you can only progress slowly, and you lack the surprise of reaching the heavens in one step. Fang Yan was a little unhappy, he thought, this old man doesn't even know how to praise someone. Who are you calling a child of the poor? My family was rich back then, okay? Now my family is even richer, okay? Gong Sun Chi was deeply inspired, he looked at the dragon god and the dragon god with sincerity and said, A teacher for a day, a teacher for life. To be able to become master's disciple is the greatest fortune of my life, no matter what, I will continue to work hard. Even if it's a little slow, it doesn't matter. I think one day, I will climb to the heavenly realm. Your disciple will definitely not embarrass Master. The dragon god grinned and said, With these words of yours, our relationship as master and disciple has not been in vain. The dragon god seemed to be bidding farewell to his disciple. After he was done, he looked at Fang Yan and said, I haven't moved in a long time, and I don't usually have the thought of exercising with great fanfare. So, in this battle, I hope you can let me have a taste of failure. Fists and legs have no eyes, killing or mutilating depends on your means. The dragon god's voice was very calm, and when he spoke, there was a faint smile on his face. However, it gave off a tough feeling that was hard to ignore. The dragon god, usually looked low-key and amiable, like an approachable little old man. Only at this moment did he reveal the aura of a heavenly Tao realm in his fangs. Killing or mutilating depends on your means. This sentence was very straightforward, and it was also very magnanimous. It was 1,000 times more magnanimous than Yi Ro's, if you kill him, I will definitely kill you. The dragon god was a domineering person who saw through life and death and was willing to give up everything, while Yi Ro was a domineering person who cherished him excessively and wanted to make him stay. Both were very precious. Fang Yan nodded and said, To be honest, I don't blame you for breaking the old drunkard's tendons, because if I had one today, I would have done the same to you. The dragon god laughed again, looked at Fang Yan and said, You're really an interesting guy, I'm full of expectations for you. The wind is cold in the high mountains, are we going to start? If this goes on, this old man's body won't be able to take it anymore. Fang Yan turned to look at Yi Ro, looked straight into her beautiful eyes, and said, I'll be right back. Okay. Yi Ro nodded. If I don't come back, I will avenge you, and then raise your parents. There's something else I need your help with, but I don't know how to ask, speak. Our Fang family has only one child for generations. If I don't come back today, when you have children in the future, can you choose one of them to be surnamed Fang? The muscles on Yi Ro's face twitched, and she asked coldly, Do you think the child's father will agree? Fang Yan's expression changed drastically, and he said, Are you really going to have children with him? Why not? Yi Ro looked straight into Fang Yan's anxious eyes, and said, If that man is Fang Yan. Fang Yan stretched out his arm, and Yi Ro lay in his arms like a little bird. There was no shyness, nor was there any violence. It was so natural, filled with reluctance. Gong Sun Chi glanced at his master, and then quickly looked away. He thought, Master doesn't need to do this, right? Yi Ro and Gong Sun Chi began to retreat, and they only stopped when they reached the edge of Flying Peak. Even this place wasn't considered safe for two heavenly Tao realm experts to fight. However, they were powerful themselves. As long as they didn't directly participate in the battle, just some forces and rocks wouldn't be able to harm them. Fang Yan and the divine dragon stood facing each other. One side's clothes were whiter than snow, and they were moist like water. However, the water wasn't a stream, but a vast ocean that surged without end. The other side wore a heavy gray robe, and he had a steady and unshakable aura. Both of them had their auras converged, and not a single bit of their forces leaked out. Even so, they still gave off an unreachable sense of distance. Fang Yan was smiling, and so was Tia Feng. Both of them were smiling naturally and casually, without any signs of danger. Fang Yan placed one hand behind him, and the other made an inviting gesture, and said, "Mr. Divine Dragon, please go ahead. Young man, don't stand on ceremony." The Divine Dragon said with a smile. As he spoke, he tapped the ground with his toes, and a rock shattered into countless pieces. The countless rocks turned into countless weapons, and as if they had eyes, they stabbed at Fang Yan in front of him. This shameless old man, Fang Yan cursed in his heart. Although he said that the young man shouldn't stand on ceremony, his hands were already attacking the young man without restraint. Fang Yan waved his hands and waved them in the air. Then, a huge balloon was pushed forward. Crack, crack, the gravel hit the huge invisible balloon and bounced back, shooting at the Divine Dragon. At the same time, the balloon drifted towards the Divine Dragon desperately, as if it was going to envelop the entire Divine Dragon inside. With a smile on his face, the Divine Dragon stretched out a finger and poked at the balloon. Master, Gong Sun Chi's heart almost jumped out of his throat. He was not sure about the strength of the water overflow state, but he knew that there was something else to this balloon. As long as his master's body touched this balloon, it would explode and tear him into pieces. Poof, the Divine Dragon tried his best to tap the balloon with his finger. Just like a soap bubble blown by a child, it disappeared in the air without a trace. There was no explosion, and no one was torn apart. This made Gong Sun Chi confused, but he could not ask anyone else. After all, she was the only one present who could answer his questions. He did not want to ask her. This exchange was completed in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. Both of them only lifted their toes and waved their arms. During the battle, both of them stood in the same place, and did not move at all. Everything returned to normal. The Divine Dragon looked at Fang Yan, and said with a smile, "This is considered a warm-up, right?" Fang Yan nodded, and said, "Warm-up complete." Chapter 837. The foot of Feng Mountain was bustling with noise. Master Zhang, did they start fighting? Did they start fighting or not? Who knows? There wasn't even a bird, let alone a human. I say, someone like the dragon god wouldn't go up the mountain through this path, right? They stood on the peak after a few leaps and bounds. Do you think this is a fantasy film? No matter how powerful they are, they're still human, and they have to walk properly. I heard they went to the Ghost's Sorrow Peak, and some people are climbing there. Should we go and take a look? The dragon god is too much. Why didn't he do a live broadcast of such a big battle? If we stay here, they won't even know when the battle is over. Why don't we set up a big screen here in the Grand Canyon for a live broadcast? We can buy tickets to enter, drink beer, eat barbecue, and have a few pretty girls. Ha, he's not economical at all. Do you think this is a challenge tournament? What kind of master is Mr. Dragon God? I heard he's like a god who can kill a big tiger with one punch. Beijing. A villa in the suburbs. Qinitian held a cup of tea and stood on the edge of the corridor, looking at the undulating peaks in the distance. Those peaks belonged to the sphere of influence of Fragrant Mountain and were far away from Feng Mountain. However, she was watching with deep focus, as if the battle of the century that she had been longing for was taking place there. She wasn't like the other rich young masters, who drove luxury cars with famous wine and beautiful supermodels to protect them. She knew the meaning of this battle, and she also knew what defeat meant. However, this battle was beyond her ability. Moreover, with that woman by Fang Yan's side, even with Qinitian's arrogance, he had to admit that she was more suitable than him. My battlefield is not there. Qinitian retracted her gaze and said to herself. This is an unfair world. Some people are born high above and have everything. Some people struggle their whole lives but end up poor and destitute. Some people enjoy the blessings of multiple lovers, and some people give their hearts but don't get any warm response. I know you're not satisfied. You think you work harder than them, you think you're smarter than them, and you put in more effort than them. But he didn't receive any special treatment from others. It was as if everyone in the world had their eyes on that person. It's like a clown in a circus. You try your best to perform the funniest performance and the most difficult action, but all the audience is attracted to a guy who is acting as a puppet. They gave him flowers, applause, and riches. You, on the other hand, are unknown, doing what you have done countless times. Yes, it's unfair. I feel that the world is too cruel to you. But, unfair things happen every day, and poor people appear every day. Why should I give you such a chance? In the Phoenix Orchid Grove in the courtyard stood a man completely shrouded in a black robe. He stood there motionlessly, as if he had become one with the phoenix tree. However, his eyes were bright. This was the only proof that he was still alive. Because I think you're more valuable than them, Chinitian said coldly. High and mighty, without any feelings. So, prove to me the value of your existence. The man bowed slightly and disappeared from the courtyard. Muing walked over and stood behind Chinitian. He followed her line of sight and looked at the mountain peak in the distance. He asked, is he trustworthy? Of course not, Chinitian answered without hesitation. Would you trust a blade? Young lady, what do you mean? I'm only giving him a chance to prove himself. I don't trust him at all. Trust is a very precious word. I have to give it to the people I care about the most. I understand, Muing nodded. Has the battle begun? Chinitian asked. Our people have arrived at Feng Mountain, but they haven't found the exact location of the battle between Fang Yan and the Dragon God. This is also their intention. They don't want anyone to disturb them except for the two sides. But, as soon as they have a result, they will send it back immediately. Chinitian didn't deny it. She handed the teacup to Muing and said, I'm going to take a bath. Muing took the teacup and continued to guard the place. He knew that countless people were waiting for the final result. Huacheng. Lu Xiaoge finished his work and walked to the courtyard for a few steps to get some fresh air. That's good. At least I can take a breather now. The Lan clan of Lan Mountain Valley, the Lu clan of Willow Tree, and their Chaoyan technology were all in great danger when the Jiang clan suddenly launched an attack on them. Any carelessness and they could be destroyed or devoured by them. Coupled with Li Ya's kidnapping and Du Qing's imprisonment, the ironclad alliance they had painstakingly built in Huacheng was almost dismembered. Without Huacheng to support Fang Yan, how could they fight against the Jiang clan in the future? Fortunately, at the most critical moment, the Qin clan jumped out and helped them offset the majority of the Jiang clan's attack and attracted the Jiang clan's main firepower. But, the situation still wasn't optimistic. The Jiang clan was still the Jiang clan, and the Qin clan didn't intend to start a full-scale war with them. It was already difficult for them to protect themselves. To defeat the Jiang clan, they didn't even know how to start. But, if Fang Yan won, it would be tough for him. Lu Xiaoge didn't know martial arts, but she was a smart woman. She knew how to judge the situation. She was very clear that the success or failure of this battle would determine the success or failure of Chaoyan technology, and the existence of the ironclad alliance of Huacheng. If Fang Yan was defeated or killed in battle, would the Qin clan still be willing to support them like this? Would Lan Mountain Valley and Lu Shu, who were fighting together with them, still advance and retreat with them? If Fang Yan was no longer around, how much loyalty would they have left to this side? The worst-case scenario was that, when they realized that the situation wasn't right and smelled blood, they might turn red and counterattack, becoming their biggest enemy. As an outstanding manager, as Fang Yan's representative in Huacheng, he had to have this sense of crisis. He could only keep this thought in his heart, in the deepest part of his heart. He couldn't even let his current battle partners know about it. He had to be fully prepared. Lu Xiaoge was very tired. But, at this moment, she suddenly relaxed. She felt that it was a little strange. Fang Yan was fighting a decisive battle in Feng Mountain, and his life was hanging by a thread. Shouldn't she be more worried? Shouldn't she be under more pressure? Soon, she figured out the reason. She gave up, or rather, temporarily gave up. Because the decisive factors were all gathered on Fang Yan. Fang Yan bore all the pressure for them. If Fang Yan won, then they would naturally sound the horn to counterattack and fight to the death with the Jiang clan. But, if Fang Yan lost, or Fang Yan died, their efforts in Huaqing wouldn't have much meaning. With just them, they couldn't stop the attack of the Jiang clan or other forces. This had nothing to do with how hard they worked. Only now did Lu Chaoge truly realize the importance of Fang Yan's existence to them. That young man, that delicate man with thin shoulders, the man who idled around all day and was complained that he didn't do proper work, was actually supporting and protecting them in his own way. Fang Yan, Lu Chaoge looked at the gray sky. Today's weather wasn't very good. There was no moon or stars in the sky. However, the night breeze was cool, so it didn't make people feel depressed. Lu Chaoge held her stomach and said softly, "You must live." Swallow dock. The teacher was used to sleeping early. If there was nothing else, he would eat dinner at around 8 o'clock every night, boil a bucket of hot water, soak his feet, and then lie in bed to sleep. Of course, he was also the earliest to get up in the village. When the people of Swallow Dock were still in their sweet dreams, he had already gotten up with a manure basket on his back to pick up feces. There were many domestic animals in Swallow Dock. The animals wandered around and defecated everywhere. However, the people who came to Swallow Dock would feel that it was especially clean. It was rare to see any animal feces, because they were all picked up by the elders of Swallow Dock, led by the teacher. The night was gloomy, and the weather was cold. The teacher who lived at the entrance of the village was the first to bear the brunt of the cold. The north wind blew, almost sweeping up the straw mat in his thatched cottage. The teacher stood in the middle of the courtyard, wearing a fox skin. He looked up at the sky and muttered to himself, "It's probably going to snow heavily before the Laba festival." He held an enamel jar in his hand, which contained a large amount of tea leaves. After taking a big gulp of the tea leaves, the teacher looked at the green mountains in the distance and sighed, "This child is still too impatient, but isn't the water overflow realm in line with the heavens? If I had severed my mortal thoughts back then, where would I be now?" Since Fang Yan has the confidence to challenge the dragon god, it means that he is fully prepared. He will soar to the heavens tonight. Fang Clan. Fang Clan's ancestral hall. Fang Hui, the old master of the Fang clan, didn't have dinner that night. In the evening, he asked his eldest son-in-law to push him in, then chased his son-in-law away and closed the door of the ancestral hall. Before this, he had already abstained from meat and wine. He knelt in front of the plaque of the Fang clan's ancestors and prayed devoutly. He didn't believe in ghosts and gods, but he still hoped that they could protect his grandson. Fang Yan will win. Chapter 838. This was a world where looks mattered. Jia Zhaoqiang was short and fat, and he stuttered a little. According to the natural elimination law of society, it was not easy for a man like him to find a partner. However, if he was the second young master of the Jia family in Yanjing, it would be a different story. Jia Zhaoqiang knew where his disadvantage was. Compared with other handsome playboys, he felt that he was too simple and honest. Therefore, in order to make up for his shortcomings, Jia Zhaoqiang especially liked to spend money. Anyway, he had secretly calculated that according to his current daily consumption level, the existing assets of the Jia family were enough for him to squander for 365 years. Even if he gave 265 years to his elder brother, he still had 100 years to enjoy. Jia Zhaoqiang was very worried that he would not live to 100 years old. Therefore, Jia Zhaoqiang put in a lot of effort when he spent money. For example, this time, in order to enjoy the much-anticipated Battle of Feng Mountain, Jia Zhaoqiang brought a team of Hummers. There were 2 bodyguards from the famous security company Golden Shield Security. In fact, He did not need bodyguards at all. However, rich playboys and young ladies all brought bodyguards. If he did not bring 2 bodyguards, wouldn't he be looked down upon? There was a chef and a personal assistant, red wine produced by a centuries-old Bordeaux wine cellar, a charcoal oven, and a rising B-list star, Li Qing, whom he had arranged a time earlier. Naturally, Jia Zhaoqiang gathered with other playboys. They drank and bragged, and then took beautiful girls to the tent for wild sex. After Jia Zhaoqiang drank 2 bottles of wine and ate a few pieces of fat but not greasy lamb legs, he became interested in that aspect. He dragged the star named Li Qing into the tent. Li Qing followed Jia Zhaoqiang with infinite shyness in the midst of the playful teasing of those playboys. Whoosh, a white shadow flashed in front of Jia Zhaoqiang's eyes, rolling up a cold wind and attacking Jia Zhaoqiang's body. Jia Zhaoqiang stood there for a long time and asked, "Did you see anything?" Li Qing was busy acting shy. How could she notice anything else? So, she shook her head and said, "What? I didn't see anything." Jia Zhaoqiang rubbed his eyes and said, "It seems that there is nothing, let's go in. You only know how to scare people." Li Qing pinched Jia Zhaoqiang's fat arm. It was more like she was scratching and flirting with him. "I really saw a shadow," Jia Zhaoqiang said seriously. Seeing Li Qing's tender and alluring little face, Jia Zhaoqiang felt that there was really no need for him to waste time on some insignificant matters. So, Jia Zhaoqiang held Li Qing's little hand and said, "Maybe I'm seeing things. Come quickly, I'm in a good mood, I'll let you enjoy yourself today." Pa! A black object flew towards Jia Zhaoqiang's face. Jia Zhaoqiang couldn't dodge in time, and his fat face was hit by the object. "Who is it?" Jia Zhaoqiang shouted. "Who the F***ck hit me?" He reached out his hand to touch his face, and there was a layer of greasy stuff on his palm. He placed it in front of his nose and sniffed it. It smelled like roasted mutton. Jia Zhaoqiang looked at his feet. It was the leg of lamb that he had thrown away earlier. He kicked the leg of lamb away and shouted at the top of his voice, "Who the F***ck threw something at me? What's going on? Are you not satisfied with me? If you're not satisfied, come out and fight me one-on-one. Don't you think hiding in the dark and doing this kind of thing is too shameful?" Although Jia Zhaoqiang was fat, he wasn't stupid at all. He had already calculated in his heart. In this area, there were only 3 families that the Jia family couldn't afford to offend, and one of them was a woman. The other 2 families were stationed slightly further away from him. Even if they wanted to hit him with a roasted mutton leg, they probably didn't have the strength to do so. Therefore, the people who could throw a mutton leg at his face were naturally the people that the Jia family wasn't afraid of. "Jia who hit you? What are you shouting about? Even a small celebrity can't shut your mouth? Old Jia, if you don't go, I won't be polite anymore. Li Qing happens to be my type. Why don't I swap places with you?" Li Qing pulled Jia Zhaoqiang's arm and whispered, "Brother Chang, let's go in. I'm scared." Jia Zhaoqiang rubbed his face that was hurting from being hit by the mutton leg and said, "Son of a b***tch, don't let me know who did this shameless thing. If I find out, I'll definitely cut off the pig head meat on your face piece by piece." After saying that, Jia Zhaoqiang was about to enter the tent with his butt in the air when his butt suddenly tightened. Slap! Something hard smashed into his buttocks. Jia Zhaoqiang suddenly turned around and shouted, "Who? Who did this? Come out right now. If you have the guts, fight me one-on-one. I'll skin you alive today." Their employer was attacked, and the 2 retired bodyguards naturally ran over to protect him. "Young Master Chang, it's a mutton leg." One of the bodyguards used a knife to pick up the suspected murder weapon from the ground and reported to Jia Zhaoqiang. "Damn it." Jia Zhaoqiang looked at it and realized it was the mutton leg that he had just thrown out. Now, Jia Zhaoqiang couldn't curse anymore. He had a creepy feeling in his heart. They were stationed at the edge of the canyon. There was a river at the edge of the canyon called Red River. When Jia Zhaoqiang threw the mutton leg, it was thrown in the direction of the Red River. In other words, this roasted mutton leg should be lying quietly at the bottom of the Red River. Why did it appear again? And it hit my butt? The more Jia Zhaoqiang thought about it, the more scared he felt. Young Master Chang, should we search the area? The other bodyguard asked. Brother Chang, let's go in. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Li Qing saw Jia Zhaoqiang's pale face and eyes filled with fear. Jia Zhaoqiang grabbed Li Qing's hand and said, Go back, let's go back now. Brother Chang, are we not going to watch the final battle? Not anymore. Let's go, let's go. Drive. Go and drive. Da and Quan are in our car. Be careful. Yes. The two bodyguards didn't know what was going on, but they agreed readily. To be able to squeeze in the same car with the beauty Li Qing was something they couldn't ask for. Although Li Qing couldn't jump to the top, in the eyes of these bodyguards, she was already an unapproachable big shot. After warming up, it was time to get down to business. Shenren's body disappeared on the spot, then suddenly appeared in front of Fang Yan. Shenron struck with his palm. It was an ordinary palm. Fang Yan reached out to receive it, but it was too late. That palm pressed against his chest. The heart of Tai Chi spun naturally, and the chi in his body leaked out wildly. Then, it gathered at the chest that was about to be hit by Shenren's attack. Pa! That palm hit a transparent ball of light. It was like a firefly that was freed from a bottle cap. Starlight scattered in all directions, and Fang Yan's body was also sent flying out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Fang Yan, who was in the air, was still dizzy. He hadn't been able to react or adapt to the rhythm of the attack. Fang Yan's eyes were still watching the moment Shenron disappeared, but Shenron had already arrived in front of him. When Fang Yan saw Shenron coming to him, he had already struck with his palm. When Fang Yan saw the ordinary palm that the divine dragon had painstakingly unleashed, he raised his hand to block it. However, the palm was already about to land on his chest. If it wasn't for the heart of Tai Chi, which spun naturally when it was in danger, forming a protective ball of air in front of his chest, that stream of air would have blocked Shenren's palms, although in the end, they were smashed into pieces by Shenren's seemingly ordinary palm, but they still managed to protect Fang Yan's vital points and saved Fang Yan's life. Otherwise, who would be willing to suffer Shenren's palm for nothing? Fang Yan's body kept flying. He flew over Yi Rou's head, over the forest, over the boulders, and was about to fly out of the range of the mountain to the cliff where he missed his footing. Fang Yan knew the height of Feilai Peak. If he were to fall, he would definitely die. He forcefully gathered his chi and leaped into the air, taking large strides towards the peak of Feilai Peak. It looked like a celestial being sprinting in midair. Pa! Fang Yan's feet landed on the ground, and he felt a sweet taste in his throat as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fang Yan, are you alright? Yi Rou asked anxiously. Yi Rou was also a Heavenly Dao realm expert. She had also watched the duel from a close distance, so she could understand how miraculous Shenren's palm strike was. No, he didn't look miraculous at all. His disappearance was very ordinary, and so was his palm strike. There was no flying sand and rocks, nor was there any thunder or lightning. He had just struck out his palm in such an ordinary manner. However, there was no way to dodge or block it. Even if she were to deal with that palm strike, she would probably end up being sent flying, right? Is this the true strength of Shenren's Shenron? Yi Rou thought worriedly. If that was the case, did Fang Yan really have a chance of winning? Fang Yan, Gong Sun Chi had just shouted Fang Yan's name when he hurriedly shut his mouth. Fang Yan was his master's opponent. How could he be overly worried about him in a battle between the two of them? Your eyes are deceiving you, Shenron said in a deep voice as he looked at Fang Yan with great difficulty. Chapter 839. Your eyes are deceiving you. The dragon god looked at the injured Fang Yan and said. You didn't see me. I didn't see you. Fang Yan's expression was solemn as he said in a low voice. You saw me disappear on the spot. I wasn't me at that time. You saw me appear in front of you. I wasn't me at that time either. You saw me attack. I wasn't me at that time either. The human I will create some illusions for the brain. Some illusions are formed naturally. Some are created artificially. Everything you saw was created artificially. I understand. Fang Yan nodded. Now I've thought it through. The ripples you created when you disappeared were illusions. Then, you used one illusion after another to create a complete attack. But at that time, you were already in front of me. That palm strike, I endured that palm strike much earlier than what I saw. Mountain Spirit Manifestation. The dragon god said with a smile. It's just a small trick. But if it's used cleverly, it can achieve unexpected results. You've just entered the water overflow state. It's rare for you to understand the key to it so quickly. It's the heart of Tai Chi, Fang Yan explained. I thought the heart of Tai Chi would only react naturally when there's danger. Now I understand. My heart of Tai Chi has already started to prepare when it sensed danger. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to block your attack just now. The heart of Tai Chi is a 1,000-year-old lost art. It's indeed extraordinary. However, in these hundreds and thousands of years, there aren't many who could achieve the heart of Taiji. The divine dragon god gave Fang Yan a very high evaluation. You're a rare talent in the Tai Chi lineage. In time, your achievements will be limitless. Thank you, Mr. Dragon God, for your praise. Fang Yan said with a smile. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the bloodstain at the corner of his mouth. The white robe on his body was soaked in red spots by the blood, but there was nothing he could do about it. Who wouldn't bleed in the midst of fighting and killing? If it wasn't his blood, then it was someone else's. Fang Yan put the blood-stained handkerchief into his pocket, looked at the dragon god, and said, "Let's try again." Look again. The divine dragon looked at Fang Yan with great difficulty and said. As he spoke, the dragon god once again disappeared from the spot. In the air, there was the sound of space being torn apart, and the sound of air being wrapped up. The divine dragon once again appeared in front of Fang Yan and slapped Fang Yan's chest. It was the same attack method as before. The sense of rhythm. The dragon god's desperate attacks already had its own unique rhythm. Moreover, he was the one leading the rhythm. Everything was under his control. You could only obey or follow his rhythm. Otherwise, you would only suffer worse consequences. Because his attack was a domain, an illusion. If the domain was broken, it would explode. The shattering of the illusion would leave people at a loss as to what to do. Don't even think about it. Fang Yan's eyes turned cold as he gritted his teeth. This time, no matter what, he would not let the dragon god hit him again. Just as he was thinking this, the heart of Taiji had already started to spin. That transparent crystal seemed to be motionless, but it had already increased its speed to the limit. It was like the sun and moon in the sky that had not moved, but their speed was not something that could be followed by human strength. Waves of warm air broke down from the crystal core and gathered at the spot where the attack was about to hit. They were about to gather into a ball of light again and block the dragon god's desperate attack. Of course, this was the heart of Taiji's natural resistance. Fang Yan also wanted to resist. His body spread out and his feet drew circles on the ground. His body spun into a white ball of light. This time, he finally had the time to fully spread out drunken crane riding the wind. His body turned into a ball of feathers, a leaf, and a transparent ball of light. When you hit a feather with your fist, would the feather be hurt? No, before your fist even touched the feather, the strong airflow stirred up by your fist would have already sent the feather flying. Fang Yan was the feather that could be sent flying at any time. Of course, this time was different from the last time. This time, he was the one who wanted to be sent flying, he was consciously trying to avoid and defend himself. Last time, he was accidentally hit and was sent flying. Fang Yan felt that he was well prepared this time. Pa! Another palm hit Fang Yan's chest. The palm was light as a feather, but it suddenly came. It pierced through time and space, without any warning. Moreover, Fang Yan's drunken crane riding the wind didn't even have time to dodge this palm. In other words, even if Fang Yan turned into a ball of feathers, the dragon god's desperate palm could still destroy the feather. If he used too much strength, the feather would fly away. If he used too little strength, he wouldn't be able to cause any damage to the feather. However, this choice wasn't too difficult for the dragon god's desperate life. He wanted to hit, and he hit. It looked as simple as eating and drinking. Fang Yan tried everything he could and prepared himself, but still couldn't stop the dragon god's desperate palm. And it was the same palm that he had used before. A fight between experts can change in an instant. Once a technique is used too often, it can bring fatal danger to oneself. However, the dragon god's desperate life managed to use the same palm to send Fang Yan flying twice in a row. Fang Yan's body once again flew into the air. Like a kite, he was blown into the air by the wind, then forcefully used qi to twist his body. Whoosh! Fang Yan stepped through the air, once again landing in front of the dragon god's desperate life. The dragon god stared at Fang Yan and smiled. At that time, you shouldn't have forcefully used qi. Fang Yan smiled, but dark red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Fang Yan's internal organs were injured, and this injury was more serious than the last time. This time, it was your brain that lied to you. The dragon god stared at Fang Yan and smiled. Fang Yan once again took out the handkerchief from his pocket and carefully wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Then, he folded the handkerchief once again. He folded the blood-stained part inside to prevent it from dirtying his clothes when he put it in his pocket. After he was done with these matters, Fang Yan looked at the divine dragon and said, "I understand." "What do you understand?" the dragon god asked. "I understand how an expert should fight." Fang Yan grinned. He laughed heartily and comfortably. "Yes, this kind of feeling is really wonderful. You only used your finger to poke through a layer of window paper, but you can discover a colorful and wonderful world." The water overflow realm focused on intent and not action. The intent was the soul, and action was the bone. In the past, when Fang Yan fought with others, he would always use all sorts of moves to fight with his life on the line. Elbow strikes, crotch kicks, throat grabbing, nothing was spared. It was all to defeat his opponent. But it was different now. Such a method could not injure an expert at the heavenly Tao realm. Just like a figure like the dragon god, he might shatter you with a palm before you could even throw a punch. Forget about moves. There was no need to deliberately remember anything. Just follow the heavenly Tao naturally. The heavenly Tao was the highest law, far surpassing the martial Tao that Fang Yan had painstakingly learned for more than 20 years. Now, they should be using intent and aura to fight, and not just those moves from before. Otherwise, you would be at a disadvantage, always slower than others. Gong Sun Chi came in front of Yi Ro and whispered, "What do they mean? Why did Master say that Fang Yan was deceived by his brain? Can the brain deceive itself?" Yi Ro did not even look Gong Sun Chi in the eye, and said with a deadpan expression, "You don't understand." Gong Sun Chi knew that he was here to embarrass himself. They weren't even from the same world as them, so why did they come here? Then, the smile on Dragon God's face gradually disappeared. He looked at Fang Yan seriously and said, "Let us begin for real." Just as he said that, Fang Yan had already appeared in front of him. No, he appeared above him. Fang Yan was flying high above, holding a huge balloon in his arms. The balloon looked like it was corporeal, and it even made hissing sounds as it fell. There was gas flowing around the balloon, and when some of it was released, more of it would come in to replenish it. Fang Yan pressed the balloon in his hand towards the top of the dragon god's head. The dragon god's struggling fingers stretched out halfway before he quickly retracted them. His body turned illusory, and he disappeared into thin air. Rumble, a huge explosion rang out, and then a strong airflow swept through everything in the surroundings like a sharp blade. The grass was broken, and some of the thicker branches and tree trunks were also directly cut into two by the scattered air currents. The place where Dragon God was standing just now had become a huge pit more than a meter deep. The stench of burnt rocks came from the pit, and some weeds and branches were directly burned into the air. If Dragon God had not dodged in time, he would have been vaporized by now. Dragon God stood on a large protruding rock, looked at the huge pit, and looked at Fang Yan with interest, and said, "This is getting interesting." In the cave halfway up Feilai Peak, a man wrapped in a black robe sat. He was motionless like a withered corpse, but his ears were slightly perked up, listening to every movement on the mountain top. He was the third party in this battle. Chapter 840. 1,000 cups of wine was too little. To the Dragon God, the current Fang Yan was the only one who could truly be his opponent. The more powerful Fang Yan did not make him panic. Instead, it was something that made him feel happy both physically and mentally. Just as the Dragon God told his disciple, Gongsun Qi, he had not exercised for a long time. There was no motivation to exercise, and there was no opponent that interested him. Fang Yan's appearance made him want to fight again. Just as he was about to let his disciple, Gongsun Qi, challenge Fang Yan came looking for him. However, Fang Yan was an expert who had just entered the overflow state. He was like a farmer's boy who had just left the mountain village, only to find out that he was the heir to a billionaire family, and that he was about to inherit a fortune that could rival a country. He was so excited that he bought a sports car, a luxurious villa, and kept a C-list celebrity as his mistress. He felt that his life was too luxurious. In the eyes of the truly rich, he was still a country bumpkin. He did not know how to spend money. In the eyes of the Dragon God, Fang Yan did not know how to use the power of the overflow state. He had a mountain of treasures, but he did not know how to squander them. To people like them who valued martial arts as much as their lives, it was a pity. Therefore, he guided Fang Yan step by step, hoping that he could find the feeling sooner. Now, he saw the results of his labor. Fang Yan's talent was quite high, and did not let him down at all. Of course, if Fang Yan was not talented enough, he would not have been able to understand the deeper meaning of his words so quickly. "Congratulations on entering the water overflow realm," the Dragon God said to Fang Yan with a smile as he struggled to stand on the protruding boulder. Fang Yan understood what the Dragon God meant. At this time, he truly had the power of the overflow state. Although he had entered the overflow state long ago, in the previous battles, he was still a martial artist who only knew how to use brute force. He would be confused by the illusion created by the enemy, and he would be blinded and led by the opponent's consciousness. He could not be himself. He could not unleash the true power of the water overflow realm. "I know how to fight now," Fang Yan said with a smile. He bowed slightly to the Dragon God and said, "Then let me use my ultimate strength to defeat you. Come, avenge Mo Qingdi." "That's what I thought before. I wanted to defeat you, just like how you defeated Mo Qingdi," Fang Yan said with a serious expression, "but now, I only want to defeat you. This is the true meaning of this battle, what? Are you not willing to avenge Mo Qingdi? I think he would be willing to settle such a matter himself. Even if I did defeat you, he would only see it as me defeating you, and not as me avenging him." "Indeed." The divine dragon nodded his head with much difficulty. "This is the character of not underestimating the enemy. I've found the true meaning of fighting." Fang Yan smiled and said, "So, please accept my challenge." As he spoke, Fang Yan's body rose into the air. His figure disappeared in the air, then reappeared in front of the Dragon God. Fang Yan slammed his palm towards the Dragon God's face. It was a light punch, seemingly without any force behind it. However, after seeing Fang Yan's attack, the Dragon God Mo underestimated the enemy's expression became unprecedentedly solemn. This palm was full of concept and power. He formed a delicate balance, an extremely closed and domineering domain. This made the Dragon God unable to accept it, but it would not be good if he did not accept it. the divine dragon tenaciously sent out a palm strike as well. It was also a light and seemingly powerless palm strike. Ho! Their palms collided in the air, creating ripples in the air. As their palms approached, the ripples became larger and larger, and the air currents gathered became more and more frenzied. Pa! Fang Yan and the dragon god's palms finally met, like two magnets slowly approaching each other. Like repels, the greater the magnetic force, the greater the force you exert, the greater the repulsive force. Hiss! The air currents stirred up by Fang Yan and the dragon god hissed, like a beautiful shirt that was torn to pieces before it could be put on. This was Fang Yan's domain meeting dragon god's domain. When the air currents in the domain were completely drained, both of their domains could not hold on any longer and exploded at the same time. Boom! The transparent gas exploded. Other than the dust in the air and the large crater on the ground, there was almost no evidence. Meanwhile, Fang Yan and the dragon god Laborious disappeared to the left and right. When they appeared in front of everyone again, it was when Fang Yan grabbed a big ball and slammed it on the dragon god Laborious' head. The dragon god Laborious punched out, and a huge hole appeared in the ball, but it still persisted and shrouded the dragon god Laborious' body. Boom! The ball smashed on the boulder under the dragon god Laborious' feet, and the boulder bore the brunt of the violent force. Huge cracks appeared on the surface of the stone. First, it broke from top to bottom. Then, cracking sounds rang out incessantly. Countless small cracks appeared. Finally, the base of the huge stone could no longer support itself and collapsed with a rumble. With his attack missing, Fang Yan did not dare to delay. He quickly turned around, and the dragon god Laborious' palm was already aimed at his back. Fang Yan punched back, and in an instant, the two exchanged more than 300 punches and more than 700 kicks in the air. In a flash, it was like a thunderbolt. Gong Sun Chi was dumbfounded, and said, "Is this the heavenly Tao realm? Their strength chi is endless. The cycle is the true meaning of the water overflow realm. Force is like water, and the chi in one's body is inexhaustible. The constant flow of force is called water overflow." Yi Ro raised her eyebrows, and said, "According to this fighting style, with their cultivation level, it's normal for them to fight for 3 days and 3 nights. Gong Sun Chi was amazed, and said, "Amazing. We should chase after them bravely, and not let them monopolize the glory." Yi Ro did not have a good impression of Gong Sun Chi, and if it wasn't for the sake of supporting Fang Yan, she wouldn't have minded beating him up. If Fang Yan defeated Laborious, Gong Sun Chi would definitely want to avenge his master. When that happened, she would have to beat him up. If Fang Yan was defeated by Laborious, she might have to kill Laborious in order to avenge Fang Yan, and if he wanted to avenge his master, she would still have to beat him up. They were born to be enemies. This contradiction could not be reconciled. Since they were not friends, Yi Ro's tone was not polite at all. "Work hard." Yi Ro's voice was cold, and she said, "But, some things can't be done with hard work." Boom! A thunderous sound once again resounded in the air. When the giant ball exploded, Fang Yan and Laborious Life were rushing to the periphery. When the explosion ended, sand and pebbles flew everywhere, and the trees withered and disappeared. They had almost raised half of the flying peak to the ground. Fang Yan stood on the east side of Flying Peak, while Laborious Life stood on the west side of Flying Peak. The two stood facing each other from afar, not saying a word, not even taking a step, but the sound of swords clashing could be heard. "Sword!" Laborious Life shouted. Gong Sun Chi threw the sword in his hand over, and when Laborious Life reached out to catch it, the scabbard naturally fell off, and the sword that fell into Laborious Life's hand happened to be the 3-foot-long sword. With the sword in hand, Laborious Life's aura became even colder and more murderous. "I like using swords, do you have a suitable weapon?" Laborious Life looked at Fang Yan and asked. Fang Yan shrugged and said, "I only have this pair of palms, then I'll take advantage of you." Laborious Life smiled and said. He didn't have to say that. Because opponents of their level could hurt with just a flying leaf or a plucking flower. Some were good with spears, some with short swords. Some were good with fists or iron palms. If a sword against a fist was a great advantage, then what about a sword against a spear? In the end, it all depended on the subtlety of the technique or the control of strength, as well as the right time and place. Laborious Life might not be able to win against Fang Yan even with a sword, just like how Emochingdi the Azure Dragon couldn't win against Laborious Life even with a spear. Fang Yan practiced Tai Chi, so holding a spear or a sword wasn't his forte. In the path of martial arts, one had to use what one was good at. For example, Fang Yan killed Tao addict Song transplanting seedlings with one shot. Seeing Laborious Life using a spear, Yi Ro raised her eyebrows slightly. She knew that it wasn't good for Fang Yan, but she didn't say anything. Laborious Life's forte was good with a sword, this was something everyone knew. It would be unfair if he wasn't allowed to use a sword in the competition. Besides, if Fang Yan had a weapon he liked, he could use it too. Laborious Life would not stop Laborious Life. Looking at the sword in Laborious Life's hand, Yi Ro's heart couldn't help but tighten. This sword was called Exorcist. Back then, Laborious Life used this sword to cut off Emochingdi the Azure Dragon's tendons, causing the Azure Dragon's cultivation to be completely destroyed. Since then, he had been a useless person. Now that he had used the Demon Slayer sword again, what would be Fang Yan's fate? Laborious Life raised the Exorcist Life's sword, the seemingly ordinary pitch-black sword without a trace of light. Fang Yan, take this, Laborious Life said to Fang Yan. Chapter 841. You can only see the demon-slaying sword before and after he draws his sword. Emochingdi once said to Fang Yan. It meant that when the dragon god draws his sword, you can't see the earth sword in his hand. Fang Yan naturally believed it, because Emochingdi didn't see it back then either. Otherwise, he wouldn't have expressed his feelings like this. Fang Yan's current level was the same as Emochingdi's back then, but he didn't dare to say that he was stronger than Emochingdi back then. At his peak, Emochingdi was glorious, much more high-profile and dazzling than he was now. Of course, this was mainly because he liked to keep a low profile. He wasn't the kind of man who would go around showing off his achievements. For example, the fact that he had stepped into the water overflow state, other than telling his grandfather Fang Hui, mother Lu Wan, fiancé Yi Ro's dead father, and the ancestors of the Fang family, only Master Yi Fengsheng, Yi Shaojun, Bruce Lee, and Ruan Jing of Swallow Dock knew about it. He even specifically told them not to tell anyone else. He didn't like to show off, and he didn't like to be feared. Fang Yan knew that the dragon god had lost his patience. Based on their level of cultivation, if they were to fight regularly, it would probably take 3 days and 3 nights. Obviously, that wasn't in line with the dragon god's interests. First, he didn't want to fight with Fang Yan for so long. Because the longer it went on, the greater the impact. Maybe even the country would step in to stop it. A battle without an outcome was like doing something without a climax. It was a waste of time and energy. If other onlookers found this place, the scene would be even more chaotic. It would affect the mood of the battle. Second, he was old, and no matter how strong he was, he couldn't compare to a young man like Fang Yan, who became more energetic and ferocious as he fought. Moreover, he realized that Fang Yan's learning ability was shockingly fast. With a few words of advice, he immediately broke through the wall and entered the real water overflow state. If he fought with him for 3 days and 3 nights, how much combat experience would he learn? The dragon god just needed a real opponent, but that didn't mean he wanted to lose this battle. So, he chose to use a sword. Fang Yan had no sword, only a pair of iron feet and 2 iron fists. Please. Fang Yan said. His voice was soft, and there was almost no movement of his lips. It was as if those words were not spoken by him at all. Fang Yan calmed himself down, his state of mind unprecedentedly tranquil. His eyes were clear, but his mind was blank. The heart of Taiji slowly flowed, like the roaming clouds in the sky, like the birds taking a stroll on the ground, like the brook in the forest, unhurried and natural. That transparent crystal hung upside down in the middle of the energy sea, surrounded by clouds and mist. That was the scattered chi that did not abide by the rules. There was an immortal mountain in the immortal world. The mountain was in the sea of clouds. Under Fang Yan's gaze, the dragon god's life disappeared. It was like a goshawk disappearing in the sky. The goshawk was powerful, but the sky was vast and boundless. It was difficult for it to cause any ripples. Fang Yan only had eyes for that sword. It was a very strange scene. The body of the dragon god's life disappeared, but the sword in his hand was still there. That sword hung in mid-air, like an instrument controlled by an immortal. It rushed toward Fang Yan at lightning speed. Its target was firm, and it stabbed toward Fang Yan's face. You can only see the demon slayer's sword before and after he draws his sword. This was what Mo Qingdi told Fang Yan. However, Fang Yan could clearly see that sword. He could see it clearly, even the slight vibration of the blade, and he could even hear the buzzing sound of the blade as it flew. Something's wrong. Fang Yan suddenly came to a realization. Mo Qingdi couldn't see it, but why could he see it? The dragon god's life disappeared, but why didn't the sword disappear? This wasn't a sword. It was a sword shadow. It was the shadow left by the long sword before it was swung. Because it was so fast, it left a trail in the air like a white rainbow. Where was the real body of the sword? Fang Yan's body flew into the air, like a cannonball that had been fired. The sword appeared. The sword appeared in front of Fang Yan. The sword appeared in between Fang Yan's eyebrows, and then it grew infinitely larger. It was like a giant pillar that could hold up the sky, flying toward Fang Yan's head. Fang Yan felt his body tense up, and every hair on his body stood on end. He felt the energy and hot blood in his body surge up from the bottom to the top, and then gathered in the middle of his head, as if it was going to burst through the top of his head and then burst out. It was a fear that reached the depths of his bones. Fang Yan had a strong feeling that he was going to be split in half. This sword was earth-shattering. It was ordinary, but it was majestic and spectacular. It made one's heart tremble, and it was difficult to parry. There was no sound of thunder, and no flash of lightning. It was just so quiet, like a ghost ship that suddenly appeared from the Black Sea. He was unstoppable, and it wasn't something that could be done by a human. Immortal vanquishing. Gong Sun Chi shouted in agitation. His pupils dilated as he muttered something. This is the immortal vanquishing sword art. It said that after the battle of the twin dragons, Master sealed this ultimate move, and it has never been used in front of others. So this is the might of the immortal vanquishing sword. This is the might of the immortal vanquishing sword. It's too shocking. Fang Yan. Yi Ro called out inwardly. Her hand was already holding onto the end of the whip by her waist, ready to rush forward to save him at any moment. She knew that sparring between heavenly Tao realm existences wasn't to be disturbed. She knew that this was a battle of honor and dignity between two peerless experts. She also knew that if she were to interfere, she would be breaking the rules. She even knew that it would be difficult for her to succeed even if she tried to save him. However, he was her man, her husband that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. She couldn't watch helplessly as he was slain by a single sword strike. Rules? Rules? What honor and dignity? Anyone could have it. All she wanted was for Fang Yan to be safe. Fang Yan's forehead was burning with pain. It was a pain that felt like his aura was about to be sliced apart. The clothes on his chest peeled off inch by inch, and before they could separate from his body, they were already burning in midair. Countless sparks appeared in the sky before they were instantly extinguished into ashes. Fang Yan closed his eyes. He raised his hands to block the sword, as though it was a natural counterattack, but also a natural self-preservation reaction when one encountered danger. A golden beam of light tore through the sky, illuminating the entire peak of Feilai Peak as though it was daytime. The light of Taiji. This is the light of Taiji. Gong Sun Chi was like a child who had never seen the world as he shouted in agitation. He had long heard that Fang Yan had figured out the light of Taiji. For this, a few elders from the Tao sect had specially gone to Swallow Dock to visit him, hoping that he would join the Tao sect and revive the declining trend of the Tao sect. He did not expect that he would not have the chance to see this unique skill until now. Fang Yan did not even use it when they went on a mission to the Millennium Palace. Of course, he also knew that with the flashy appearance of the light of Taiji, if Fang Yan used it, he would become a human target, and everyone would gather towards the place where the light of Taiji flashed. A smile also appeared on Yi Ro's face, but she was not as excited as Gong Sun Chi. She knew the magic of the light of Taiji and secretly prayed that the light of Taiji could help Fang Yan block the killing move that the divine dragon had painstakingly used with all his might. This was Fang Yan, the man that she, Yi Ro, liked. The light of Taiji. This was the light of Taiji that Fang Yan had figured out when he was besieged on the summit of Single Sword Peak. The light of Taiji was like a solid pillar of light, but it also looked like a huge golden sword. It went towards the demon-slaying sword that the divine dragon had painstakingly used. The demon-slaying sword slashed on the light of Taiji, and a strong burst of air was heard. The light of Taiji swept away the demon-slaying sword, and blocked this round of attack that the divine dragon had painstakingly used. The divine dragon's painstakingly used body appeared in the air, and then disappeared again. He gripped the sword with both hands, and flew down from above. Then, he slashed at the light of Taiji. Like a knife cutting through tofu, the light of Taiji that was like a golden rainbow was cut into two by the demon-slaying sword. The sword's momentum did not decrease, and continued to slash towards Fang Yan's face. The divine dragon's sword was definitely going to cut Fang Yan in two. No, if he was affected by the sword chi on the demon-slaying sword, it was likely that Fang Yan's whole body would be blasted into pieces. However, there were already very few people in this world that could make him a second severance. Even Mo Qingdi in the past had been severed under his third severance, so he could no longer move. Fang Yan could be called a prodigy of the martial Dao tier. Fang Yan's body was still flying backwards. Forced by the sword chi, Fang Yan's speed of retreat was even faster. The divine dragon was also chasing after him at high speed, looking like he would not give up until he achieved his goal. The demon-slaying sword was still in Fang Yan's eyes, but he knew that it was not the real sword. It was only the trajectory left behind by the sword when it was moving at high speed. Fang Yan's pupils dilated, and then his eyes also felt scorching hot. Fang Yan's eyes began to bleed. The blood flowed on his face, and slid down his cheeks. Then, his nose and mouth also began to bleed. The blood that flowed out did not even have time to spread. The demon-slaying sword slashed down from the top of Fang Yan's head, and his body was cut into two. Starting from the top of his head, then between his brows, eyes, nose, mouth, neck, abdomen, and neck, all the way to the lower part of his body. One Fang Yan became two halves of Fang Yan, and the two halves of Fang Yan fell to the left and right at the same time. This strike was clean and efficient, as easy and casual as a knife cutting through tofu. There was no blood. The divine dragon had worked hard, and he actually did not see any blood. Chapter 842. There was no blood, which proved that he had missed. He found it hard to accept this outcome, but it seemed to be the truth. What he had slashed was not Fang Yan, but Fang Yan's shadow. It was so fast that it almost solidified into an afterimage. Because Shenlong was too fast and his sword was too sharp, even his shadow could be cut in half. So, where was the real Fang Yan? An invisible enemy was the most dangerous one. Shenlong sensed the danger. After his sword missed, he did a 180-degree turn and slashed horizontally without any hesitation. However, he was still one step too late. Screech, the sound of flesh being cut could be heard. Fang Yan's body flew in the air like a flying white sheep. Unbeknownst to him, he was already behind the divine dragon, holding a broken sword formed from the light of Tai Chi and stabbing it into the back of the divine dragon. With one successful strike, Fang Yan retreated. Screech, the demon-slaying sword slashed across Fang Yan's body, leaving a huge gash on his body. Crack, both of them retreated at the same time and landed on the ground at the same time. Shenlong stood on the east side of the mountain peak, while Fang Yan stood on the west side. They were in the same position as before the battle, as if they had not moved at all. To the spectators, the two of them seemed to have fought for a few rounds, but all of this happened in the blink of an eye. Even the current recording equipment would not be able to capture any of their movements. The two of them stood opposite each other again, looking at each other calmly. After a few breaths, blood began to ooze from Fang Yan's chest. The threads of blood pushed open the flesh that had been cut open by the sword, and then the blood flowed out faster and more rapidly. Soon, the remaining pieces of cloth on Fang Yan's body were dyed red with blood. His exposed chest was a mess of blood and flesh, and it looked like his injury was serious. Shenlong's expression was peaceful, and his clothes were intact. He stood proudly, like a master of his generation. However, Gongsun Qi, who had rushed to his back, could clearly see that his master's back was also bleeding. The blood soaked the robe, and the gray robe became a deep faded color. The air was filled with a choking smell of blood. "Master is injured," Gongsun Qi exclaimed. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His master, the dragon god, had worked so hard, yet he was injured. Ever since he started learning from his master, he had never seen his master suffer any harm. Even some small injuries that could be ignored had never happened. For example, cutting one's finger while cutting one's fingernail, cutting one's finger while peeling an apple, abrasions, or bone dislocations while practicing martial arts. Never before. Now, Fang Yan actually stabbed his own master with a sword. What exactly happened? The light of Tai Chi was condensed by strength Chi. After Fang Yan stabbed the broken sword that had been cut off by the demon-slaying sword into the back of the divine dragon, the light of Tai Chi disappeared naturally. The sword disappeared, and a wound that went deep into his internal organs naturally appeared on his body. "Your eyes are deceiving you," Fang Yan said as he looked at the mystical dragon. It was just like what the mystical dragon had said to him in the beginning. The same words, the same tone. Even the expression was the same. The high and mighty look made him look like he deserved a beating. "Yes, my eyes are deceiving me," the mystical dragon nodded and said. "Illusion. You used 3 layers of illusion. I have to say, you're a genius. You've just learned how to use illusion to deceive your opponent and attack, but you've already reached this stage. I can only use 3 layers of illusion, just like you." Fang Yan grinned, completely ignoring the blood flowing from his chest. "Your brain is deceiving you," Fang Yan said again. "That's right," the mystical dragon once again agreed with Fang Yan's conclusion. "I shouldn't have used the second sword. When your light of Tai Chi appeared, the body you showed was already an illusion. I shouldn't have insisted on using that sword." After a pause, the mystical dragon looked thoughtfully at Fang Yan and said, "In some ways, you handled it better than the Azure Dragon Mo Qing Di. I used 3 strikes to kill Mo Qing Di, so I thought the second strike would be enough to take you down, and I even prepared the 3rd strike. But, when I used the 2nd strike, you had already used illusion to escape, and then attacked me from behind. You're different from Mo Qing Di. Mo Qing Di would have chosen to fight head-on, but you found another way. A great teacher produces a great disciple. You're a good teacher," Fang Yan said with a smile. "The teacher leads the way, but cultivation depends on the individual." The mystical dragon smiled as well. "How much you can comprehend depends on the individual. But, there's a saying that I deeply agree with: if you teach your disciple, the master will starve to death. The ancients were right." "Now, it's my turn to attack," Fang Yan said with a smile. The divine dragon struggled to lift the long sword and said, "Please." Step by step, Fang Yan walked towards the dragon god. He swaggered like a farm owner inspecting his own vegetable garden. The divine dragon struggled to look at Fang Yan's eyes. When a person made a move, his eyes were the first to react. Fang Yan looked like a brute. He wanted to walk up to the dragon god and give him a good beating. If his opponent was not the dragon god, he could indeed do so. But wasn't he joking now? Ku Fengming didn't think he was joking. He didn't walk in a straight line, but in a curve. It looked like a rampage, but in reality, it was a cycle. Every step left 3 changes, and the 3 changes could give rise to infinite changes. This was the true meaning of Taiji. 1 begets 2, 2 begets infinity. When Fang Yan spoke, it was Taiji. When he walked, it was Taiji. Every word and action was in line with the way of Taiji. Now, Fang Yan and Taiji had merged into one. I am Taiji, I mean Taiji. Because of the continuous flow of vital energy, he looked energetic and energetic. This was the performance of the legendary Taiji water overflow realm. In the eyes of the divine dragon god, Fang Yan, who was striding towards him, looked full of loopholes. But if he dared to act rashly, then every loophole could be a real trap. Of course, there would be loopholes. Everyone would have loopholes or dead ends. But when there were too many loopholes, you wouldn't know which loophole was the real one. When Fang Yan was 2 to 3 meters in front of the divine dragon god, he raised his right arm and gave a light slap. After that slap, Fang Yan's entire arm disappeared in midair. Under the gaze of Fang Yan and the divine dragon god, it turned into nothingness. At the same time, the divine dragon god slashed out with his sword. Like all the previous slashes, there was no shadow. This formed a strange scene. They were still standing in this world, but their clashing palms and swords seemed to have entered another world. There was no abnormality, nor was there the sound of metal clashing. But Fang Yan's right palm was madly slapping. Slap after slap, it was like a storm. The divine dragon god stabbed his sword again and again, like will-o'-the-wisp stars. Suddenly, there was a violent tearing sound in the space in front of them. Their hair was messed up by the strong wind, their clothes were blown backwards by the strong wind, and their facial features were distorted by the wind. Then, the 2 of them suddenly flew backwards in the air. Boom! There was a violent explosion. After the explosion, a huge tornado appeared. The grass, branches, sand, and rocks on the ground that were not hard enough were all sucked into the eye of the tornado and disappeared in an instant. It was like a black hole that could swallow everything. As it spun faster and faster, more distant and larger objects were sucked in. This included Fang Yan Tenacious, who was fighting fiercely in the air, and Yi Ro and Gong Sun Chi who were watching from the side. Yi Ro did not move, but her feet had already sunk deep into the cracks of the stones. 2 deep holes the size of footprints appeared on the hard stone ground. Gong Sun Chi's clothes flapped. His body leaned forward slightly to resist the suction of the tornado, and he looked like he was struggling. Fang Yan and the divine dragon god struggled to fight in the air. They turned into 2 shadows, one black and one white, and then 2 equally dark black dots. Finally, they merged into one and became a gale that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. Foam Mountain had a lot of wind and sand. Another sandstorm came from the north, covering the sky and covering the earth. It seemed like it was going to drown the whole world. Rustle, the terrifying sound of sand colliding rang in the air and instantly enveloped them. Fang Yan Tenacious ordered Yi Ro, Gong Sun Chi, the whole Foam Mountain, and the people on Foam Mountain to become one with them. The whole world was gray, as if the end of the world was coming. At this moment, a huge lone eagle suddenly appeared in the middle of the sandstorm. No, how could a lone eagle appear in the middle of the sandstorm? It was more like a ghost hidden in a sandstorm, a demon that struck fear in people's hearts. Yi Ro, who had been watching the battle, suddenly became alert. Her sharp eyes penetrated the sandstorm and shouted anxiously, Fang Yan, watch out. In the end, he was still a step too late. The black figure was hidden in the sandstorm. With the help of the cold wind that blew from the north, it charged towards Fang Yan and Fu Ming, who were fighting. Swish, the blazing white light lit up, and even the dense sand and dust that made it hard for people to open their eyes could not hide it. Boom, at the place where the white light came from, the sandstorm disappeared. Even the air seemed to have been purified. Soon, everything returned to normal. More sand and dust rushed over to fill the empty space. Chapter 843. The sandstorm grew stronger, as though countless flying insects were covering their heads. Looking up, they couldn't see the sky, and it was difficult to even open their eyes. It happened so suddenly that there were almost no signs. No one expected a third party to disrupt the battle between two Heavenly Dao realm experts at the peak of Maple Mountain. Who was he? What was he trying to do? To kill two Heavenly Dao realm experts in one fell swoop. Even if it was a sneak attack, it probably wasn't an easy task to accomplish such a grand goal, unless he was also a Heavenly Dao realm expert. It was so blazing that it felt like a sun had suddenly emerged from beneath their feet. The white light illuminated the night sky, illuminating the entire Maple Mountain range as though it was daytime. The intense light was like a gigantic firework that disappeared in a flash, leaving behind a huge vacuum in midair. The sand in that area was dispersed without a trace, and even time seemed to have frozen. Humans could change nature, but they would ultimately be changed by nature. Soon, the vacuum was filled with a deeper sandstorm. The sandstorm, which was rarely torn open, once again shrouded the world. It was so oppressive that it made it hard for people to breathe. Fang Yan, Yi Rou called out anxiously. She was the first to notice the anomaly in the sandstorm, but before she could do anything, the sandstorm had already lit up with a white light, as though someone had dropped an atomic bomb. When the white light vanished and the sandstorm continued, she flew towards the explosion site. Master, although Gongsun Qi's reaction was slower than Yi Rou's, he knew what had happened since he had been paying attention to the battle. There was actually another person who dared to interfere in the battle between two Heavenly Dao realm experts. Furthermore, he had charged into the battle without any qualms. Even if you're shameless, you should at least want your life, right? Through the previous exchange, Gongsun Qi knew how strong Fang Yan and his master, Divine Dragon, were. Even though he was in the periphery of the battlefield, he would occasionally be pressured and assaulted by the forces. It was enough to make him feel uneasy. If he were to fight Fang Yan or his master, he would probably be crushed to smithereens in a single round. This was the suppression of realms. You wouldn't even be able to see the trajectory of his attacks, and you would already have to bid farewell to the world. This was what happened after such cruelty. Didn't Fang Yan experience something like this when he fought with his master at the very beginning? Although the top of his head was once again covered by the sandstorm, it was as if nothing had happened. There was no white light, and there was no explosion that resounded through the mountain top. However, everything that had just happened was recorded on the ground of the explosion site. Not even a blade of grass grew, and the rubble turned into powder. It was just like the sandpit that appeared in Oasis. There was no life in the sandpit except for the tiny grains of sand. There was no one either. Fang Yan and the dragon god disappeared. The third person who came with the sandstorm like a lone nighthawk also disappeared. Master, Master, Gongsun Qi stood in the huge stone pit and shouted. He turned to look at Yi Rou and asked, where did they go? He knew that Yi Rou's realm was higher than his. She must know what he didn't know. Wait, Yi Rou said. What are we waiting for? Where did Master and the others go? Who was that man in black? How could he have the guts to disrupt this decisive battle? What happened just now? Gongsun Qi didn't finish his words. Because he found that when he was speaking, the atmosphere at the scene became tense again. Two dark figures stood on the huge stones in the east and west directions in the distance. Because the sandstorm was too strong, the visibility was reduced, and it was impossible to see their facial expressions clearly. There was another person who landed not far from the sandpit and was looking at Yi Rou with a smile. Are you okay? Yi Rou looked at Fang Yan and asked. I'm fine. Fang Yan shook his head with a smile. This drama is getting more and more exciting. Gongsun Qi looked at Fang Yan and asked, Fang Yan, who was the guy who sneaked up on us? I don't know who it was, Fang Yan said with a smile. But you will know soon. Gongsun Qi wanted to ask more, but he found that Fang Yan had turned to face the two men in black on the east and west sides. He felt a little disappointed. After all, he wasn't qualified to be an opponent at their level. Fang Yan looked at the black shadow shrouded in a black robe in the west and said with a smile, "There aren't many people in this world who would dare disrupt a battle between two heavenly Dao realm experts. And there might only be one person who would have such black-bellied thoughts, Mr. Black Dragon. I've admired you for a long time. Are you still unwilling to take off your black robe and let us fans see your true appearance?" The black-robed man in the east said with a hoarse voice, like the sound of sand colliding in the air, "Even if I were to take off my mask and let you see my true appearance, how would you know who I am?" Fang Yan was taken aback and said, "I don't know, but someone else will know." Divine Dragon seemed to be in a good mood despite his hard work. He said in a relaxed tone, "I've never seen Black Dragon's true appearance either. I'm afraid there aren't many people in this world who have seen it, right? All you need to know is that I'm Black Dragon." Black Dragon's tone was as arrogant as ever. "Anything else is meaningless to you." "That's true." Fang Yan nodded with a smile. "Since you have already admitted that you are Black Dragon, then your identity is confirmed, Mr. Black Dragon. You wish to kill us?" "That's right." Black Dragon answered without hiding anything. "Why?" Fang Yan asked. "Don't you think that there are too many heavenly Dao realm experts?" Black Dragon said with a serious look. Of course, you couldn't see his expression, but you could tell from his tone that he was asking this question in an extremely serious manner. "There are more and more people, and things are getting more and more noisy. It's really a little vexing. If we can kick two of them out at once, wouldn't this world be a lot quieter?" Fang Yan thought about it seriously as he looked at Divine Dragon and said with great difficulty, "I think what he said makes a lot of sense." "Didn't you have the same thoughts back then?" "Back then, the three of you were the most dazzling warriors in all of Huaxia." Black Dragon appeared and disappeared mysteriously, making it difficult to find his tracks. It was even more difficult for him to resist your influence in the mortal world. Only the Azure Dragon, Mo Qingdi, had the same feelings and ambitions as you, and his influence far exceeded yours. You challenged the Azure Dragon and tore his tendons. The Azure Dragon perished, and for decades, you were the only one shining in the sky, like the only star in this world. Divine Dragon's expression was solemn as he pondered for a moment, nodded and said, "Back then, I hadn't seen through the desire for fame and fortune, so I still ended up in a disadvantageous position. Men leave their names behind, and geese leave their voices behind. Life is short, not more than 100 years. Who doesn't want to leave something in this world for future generations to remember?" For the title of number one in the world, there are plenty of people who would sever their opponent's limbs and kill their entire family, much less tore off their opponent's tendons. Compared to those people, you are already considered benevolent. Divine Dragon looked at Fang Yan and said, "The Azure Dragon doesn't think so." "Of course." Fang Yan nodded with absolute certainty and said, "If I were the Azure Dragon, I would definitely want to take revenge and kill your entire family. You see, no matter what level we've reached, no matter what realm we've stepped into, we're still mere mortals. We can't let go of fame and fortune, nor can we let go of grudges," Divine Dragon said with a smile. "If someone scolds me, I'll respond with a sentence. If someone punches me, I'll return with a few kicks. Is this considered the heavenly axiom?" Fang Yan asked. Divine Dragon thought for a moment and said, "Following the heavenly axiom is naturally the heavenly axiom. Naturally, this is the highest achievement of our Tai Chi," Fang Yan said with a smile. "So, I've never felt that it's a dirty and shameful thing to take revenge on someone who has a grudge against them. On the contrary, those who bear a blood feud would abandon it in the name of the heavenly axiom, losing their passion and temperament, and going against the heavenly axiom." "You're a sentimental person," Divine Dragon said. But, Fang Yan looked at the Black Dragon and said, "We have no grudge against him, yet he came here to kill us. Isn't this too much of a bully? For his own axiom, he wants to destroy our axiom. Is this also the heavenly axiom?" Divine Dragon calmly looked at the Black Dragon and said, "This is not the heavenly axiom, this is the demonic axiom. The sword in your hand is called Exorcist, then let's use this Exorcist sword to get rid of this demon," Fang Yan suggested. "You knew I was coming." The black dragon solemnly asked. He used a special concealment method to conceal himself, even his breathing and heartbeat could not be heard. Moreover, the sandstorm tonight was extremely strong. He had adjusted the frequency of his movement to match the speed of the sandstorm. There was a 90% chance of a successful sneak attack, so how could he be intercepted by the two of them at the most crucial moment? If they hadn't known in advance, how could they have simultaneously stopped at the critical moment and drawn his Gale Tempest Bringer over? If his Gale Tempest Guide had enveloped their bodies in the sandstorm, or exploded right next to them, Fang Yan and Divine Dragon would be either dead or heavily injured. But they managed to dodge it, and their combined attack made him suffer in silence. Although he managed to dodge Divine Dragon's desperate strike, his back was slapped by that bastard Fang Yan. Even now, his qi and blood were still in turmoil, and he couldn't circulate his energy smoothly. That was why the black dragon asked such a question. Fang Yan laughed heartily and said, "We're the male and female leads of this show, and you're the best supporting actor. Although the best supporting actor appeared a little late, I knew he would definitely appear." Chapter 844. When Fang Yan mentioned that there would be new friends joining them, Divine Dragon was doubtful as well. What puzzled him was that this was a battle between Heavenly Dao realm experts. Typical warriors would be injured just by approaching slightly, much less joining. This was also the reason why they didn't announce the location of the battle. Instead, they chose the most dangerous peak of Empty Maple. They didn't wish for the curious commoners to climb up only to be blown back down by a gust of wind. Even his disciple, Gong Sun Chi, didn't have the right to join. Forcefully taking action would only be asking for trouble. Then, how many people in the world had the right to participate in the battle at Flying Peak? Divine Dragon's first reaction was to hope that Azure Dragon wouldn't underestimate his enemy. Could it be that Azure Dragon had returned from the land of extreme frost? Had he really found the legendary and extremely rare Ice Dragon bloodline? Of course, Fang Yan also had some trust in Fang Yan. At their realm, there was no need for meaningless lies to deceive others. If they came, they came. If they didn't, they didn't. Playing petty tricks would only make them look down on them. It wouldn't be of any use. However, he never expected that someone would really come. Furthermore, it was one of the three dragons of Hua Xia, Black Dragon, who was equally as famous as him. Upon hearing Black Dragon's question, Divine Dragon wished to know why Fang Yan would have such a guess. "It's because your reason for coming to kill us isn't simple," Fang Yan said with a smile. "If it's just because you think there are too many Heavenly Dao realm experts, which is why you want to kick out too, then I would think that you are a man, the most admirable person I have ever seen in my life." Clearly not. Before you came to Empty Maple, the generals Jiang Shifu met you. Isn't that so? Black Dragon fell silent for a long while before saying, "There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. I shouldn't be surprised that you know this secret." "How much did he give you?" Fang Yan said with a smile. To be able to bribe a Heavenly Dao realm expert to be a fighter for the generals, he must have invested quite a bit, right? If everyone's goal is the same, then everything else is secondary, Black Dragon said in a deep voice. "I don't like you. So I'm going to kill you." "You're right. Although your motives aren't pure, it's also a fact that you think there are too many Heavenly Dao realm experts. After all, in just a few months, Heavenly Dao realm experts have sprung up like bamboo shoots after the rain. Our Fang family has two more." At this point, Fang Yan looked back at Yi Ro sweetly. It felt good to have a strong support behind him no matter what he did. In the past, he was afraid of the dragon god and hoped that he would never run into him before the old drunkard Emo Qingdi returned. The first time he met the dragon god in the courtyard of the Xian division, his little heart was beating very fast. He was afraid that the dragon god would kill him with a sword. Now, he was at the Taiji Water Overflow realm, while his fiancée, Yi Wen, was at the Heavenly Dao realm. As long as the two of them were together, no matter if it was the dragon god or the undying black dragon, he would not feel the slightest bit of fear in his heart. Even if the two of them joined forces, of course, that was impossible. "Are you showing off?" Black Dragon looked at Fang Yan and asked. The north wind howled, and the sand and stones made a rustling sound. However, the conversation between the three of them was not affected at all. It was as if they were chatting in the backyard of a private house with beautiful weather. Showing off. Fang Yan grinned and said, if you say it's showing off, then it's showing off. You're the elder, I'll listen to you. Black Dragon was silent for a few seconds again. He looked at the dragon god and said, Junior apprentice brother, it seems like we've been too low-key all these years. Even these kids who haven't even grown out their fur can look down on us. Junior apprentice brother? Fang Yan looked at the dragon god in shock, then at the black dragon. The two of them were actually apprentice brothers? Why hadn't he heard of it before? If they were really apprentice brothers, then, what kind of dire situation would it be today? This was a question that Fang Yan had to consider. Not only Fang Yan, but even Yi Ro and Gong Sun Chi were astonished. Yi Ro pricked up her eyebrows and silently stood behind Fang Yan. Regardless, they had two Heavenly Dao realm experts on their side. If they were to really fight it out, the outcome was still unknown. Even if they couldn't beat them, escaping wouldn't be a difficult task. However, why did the dragon god have to be Black Dragon's apprentice brother? If such news were to spread, wouldn't it cause a stir in the entire martial arts world? Gong Sun Chi's mouth opened wide, but he suddenly thought of something and hurriedly closed his mouth. It wouldn't be good if Master saw it. But why did he have an Uncle Master? And this Uncle Master was Black Dragon of the Three Dragons of Huaxia. Black Dragon of the Three Dragons of Huaxia and Divine Dragon of the Three Dragons of Huaxia were apprentice brothers. Then, what was the secret behind Azure Dragon's death? Gong Sun Chi wasn't the only one with such thoughts. Fang Yan and Yi Ro had the same thought. Two of the three dragons were apprentice brothers, and the only Azure Dragon had been defeated by Divine Dragon. Everyone felt that there was something fishy going on. Divine Dragon clearly didn't expect Black Dragon to expose their relationship at this moment. He sighed and said, Nanshuan, why do you have to do this? We haven't seen each other for years. At our age, the title of apprentice brother has long vanished. Why mention this in front of these children? No matter how long it's been, apprentice brother is still apprentice brother. Don't you want to acknowledge me as your apprentice brother? Black Dragon's voice was filled with mockery. But it's true. In terms of martial cultivation, apprentice brother is a latecomer. It makes me feel ashamed. Nanshuan, did you rush over just to catch up with me? Of course not. Black Dragon Li Nanshuan laughed. His voice was like the chirping of a night bird. It was hard to hear. Back then, apprentice brother helped me defeat Mo Qingdi and picked out his tendons, turning him into a cripple. I haven't had the chance to thank apprentice brother properly. There's no need for thanks. Go down the mountain. Divine Dragon said in a deep voice. I can't leave for now. Black Dragon Li Nanshuan wasn't angered. He lifted the hat on his head, revealing a pale and ugly face that left a deep impression. This was because there was a big black hole on both sides of his cheeks, as if something sharp had pierced through them. His eyes were turbid, but they were extremely sharp, like a pair of rusty copper needles. When he looked at you, it would make you feel extremely uncomfortable. This was very different from other Heavenly Dao realm experts who reverted to their original state. Black Dragon Li Nanshuan looked at Fang Yan and said, At least, let me finish what I promised to do first. Divine Dragon tried his best to stop him and said, You know that this is the final battle between me and Fang Yan. I know. Black Dragon Li Nanshuan nodded and said, That's why I came. I wanted to take the opportunity to kill this punk, but I didn't expect him to be prepared. However, since I'm here, how can I return empty-handed? Why are you in such a hurry to kill me? Fang Yan looked at Li Nanshuan and asked. I don't want to kill you. I just want to kill Azure Dragon again. Don't underestimate your enemy. Li Nanshuan's eyes burned like a blazing fire. Even the sand and stones that covered the sky could not hide it. Unfortunately, he didn't return. Since he didn't return, it proved that he died in the land of extreme frost. I can't take revenge on him, so I can only take revenge on his family. I've been waiting for you to grow faster and mature, to become everyone's hope, to become the rising star of Nejiang. Then, at that time, I'll kill you. I wish for you to grow, but I don't wish for you to grow to a height that makes people lose control. So, when I learned that those ox noses wanted to teach you the Taiji diagram, I barged into Monkey Mountain to snatch it and destroy it. I never expected that you would be the one to benefit from it. Doesn't it feel good to enter the water overflow realm? I quite like it. Fang Yan looked at Li Nanxuan thoughtfully and said, "The wound on your face was stabbed by don't underestimate your enemy." "Punk, you're courting death." Li Nanxuan roared angrily. His energy leaked out and sent the surrounding sand and stones flying. With him as the center, not a single stone could be seen in a radius of several meters. "Looks like I guessed correctly." Fang Yan said with a smile, "Let me guess again. Back then, when you fought with Imo Qingdi, you were pierced in the cheek by Imo Qingdi's spear. As for whether you entered from the left and exited from the right, I don't know. But it changed your appearance, even your voice was affected. No wonder you wear a black robe and a thick hat all day. It's because you're too ugly and you're afraid of scaring people, right? Also, the way you talk, it sounds like you have sand in your mouth and you're rubbing it. Has anyone ever told you that your voice sounds awful?" "Fang Yan, I will kill you today." Li Nanxuan's body flashed with white light. This was the special way of using stellar qi, wind and lightning guide. Fang Yan sneered and looked at Li Nanxuan fearlessly. "Since you're here, do you still want to leave?" "Ha ha ha, just you." Li Nanxuan seemed to have heard a very funny joke. "How about adding me as well?" A hearty voice rang out. Chapter 845. "Plus me, how about that?" The man's voice was thick and heavy, but because of the irrepressible joy and anticipation in his emotions, the way he spoke gave people a hearty and heroic feeling. Under everyone's gaze, a white figure was striding up from halfway up the mountain. The mountain was high and dangerous, but he walked like it was flat ground. The thorny bushes and the boulders blocking the way did not pose any threat to him at all. All it did was make his steps more graceful and light. The way he walked was like a beautiful dance, making people want to dance to his beat. When you first saw him, he seemed very far away, just a tiny white dot in the middle of the mountain. When you blink and look again, he is a little closer to you. When you looked again, he was a little closer. The white dot became a ball of light, and the ball of light became a phantom. When he stood in front of you, the image of an extraordinary and stalwart man gradually became clear. Then, he became the person in everyone's memory, the person who made people's eyes redden and hearts beat faster. Do not underestimate the enemy. One of the 3 dragons of Hua Xia, do not underestimate the enemy. Do not underestimate the enemy who conquered the whole of Hua Xia with one spear. Do not underestimate the enemy who challenged the whole of the world without losing a single battle. He was the most talented warrior, and also the most dazzling star. He once won the whole era, but was also abandoned by that era. After that unparalleled battle with the dragon god, his tendons in his hand were broken by the dragon god, and he became a cripple. The dragon do not underestimate the enemy fell, and hid in Swallow Dock, becoming an old drunkard who was talked about and ridiculed by people. 4 years ago, in order to repair his pulse, he listened to the words of the medical fanatic Qin Wujie, and went to the extreme cold to search for the legendary ice dragon. Everyone thought that this was his alternative way of hiding from the world. Once he left, there was no news of him, and it was feared that they would never meet again. What no one expected was that he came back. At such a crucial moment. Do not underestimate the enemy. The dragon god was slightly surprised. Even with his cultivation and temperament, he could not help but be surprised when he saw the opponent in front of him, whom he had knocked down from the altar. He knew his swordsmanship, and he also knew how much damage he had done to his arm. If he wanted to cut off a person's tendons, even if that person hid both hands in a safe, it would be useless. He was confident in his swordsmanship. Therefore, when his gaze once again fell upon the long spear in the hands of the azure dragon Mo Qingdi, he had a very surreal feeling. His tendons really healed. His body really recovered. His cultivation had returned to its peak state again. Black Dragon Li Nanchuan cackled loudly. His hoarse voice contained an unconcealable hatred. Don't underestimate me, you actually didn't die. You still dare to come back. Gong Sun Chi's eyes widened as he stared at the intruder. Don't underestimate the enemy. Back then, he was able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Master and be known as a brilliant figure. Oh my god, he's so young, and he looks quite handsome. He has a unique manly charm, he looks much better than my master. I really envy Fang Yan, because he had met the 3 divine dragons of Huaxia. He had met all 3 legendary figures. It was said that collecting 3 dragons could be exchanged for a Dragon Ball. Because he had seen the 3 divine dragons of China, the 3 legendary figures, all at once, it was said that collecting 3 dragons could be exchanged for a Dragon Ball. Mo Qingdi did not care about the dragon god, nor did he care about the black dragon Li Nanchuan. He was wearing a white robe made of animal fur, stained with mud and blood, and weathered by the sun and the wind. He was wearing a white robe made of animal fur. The white robe was stained with mud and blood. It was weathered by the wind and the sun, so it looked a little old and rotten. Of course, this was different from being wrapped in powder, because his white was so natural, crystal clear, and shone with a healthy luster. Of course, this was different from wrapping powder because his whiteness was so natural, sparkling and translucent, shining with a healthy luster. Of course, this was different from being wrapped in powder, because his white was so natural, crystal clear, and shone with a healthy luster. Red blood flowed out of the blue vessels. The blue veins were clearly visible, and so was the blood. The flowing blood gave off a sense of vitality. The current Mo Qingdi was very different from the Mo Qingdi who had fallen. The current Mo Qingdi looked very graceful and very strange. At least, Fang Yan thought it was a bit inappropriate. He was originally a rustic Chinese character. How did he suddenly turn into a handsome man with snow-white skin? There was already one person in the family who walked the path of an idol. What was going on with another? All the men in the family are pretty boys. Outsiders will bully us if they see us. Mo Qingdi's eyes were fixed on Fang Yan, and Fang Yan's eyes were also fixed on Mo Qingdi. They looked at each other and smiled. There was a familiar tacit understanding and an indescribable kinship between them. As they smiled, Fang Yan's eyes became moist. He rubbed his eyes and said angrily, I told you at the time, this place is not suitable for a duel. The sandstorm is so strong that I can't even open my eyes. You're crying. Mo Qingdi said with a smile. Old drunkard, what are you talking about? Fang Yan was so angry that he tried to deny it. You're the one who's crying. I told you, it's the sand in my eyes, you're crying. Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi carefully observed Fang Yan's expression and said with certainty. Hey, are you done yet? I'm a water overflow realm master now, do you believe that I won't beat you up? Good. Mo Qingdi grinned and said, you're doing very well. I've been doing very well. How about you? Fang Yan looked at Mo Qingdi and said. You're looking very good too. I'm also doing very well. Mo Qingdi nodded and looked into Fang Yan's eyes, his face full of love and joy. All along, his relationship with Fang Yan had been very vague. They were like brothers, like close friends, like drinking buddies, but also like a master and a disciple. Fang Yan was the closest person to him in this world. Fang Yan also grew up under his gaze, and grew up under his guidance. Because of Fang Yixing's abandonment of martial arts for literature, although Fang Yan's master was Fang Hui, the person who truly taught Fang Yan the most and influenced Fang Yan the most was Mo Qingdi. If not for the nurturing and guidance of such a heavenly Tao realm master, perhaps Fang Yan wouldn't have been able to understand the heart of Taiji at that age. Without the help of the heart of Taiji, how could Fang Yan have stepped into the water overflow realm so quickly? Although the land of extreme frost is a little cold, under the care of my friends, life is still considered comfortable. When I'm hungry, there's nutritious food and fresh fruits. When I'm thirsty, there's ice spring and lava. When I'm cold, there's a mattress and coat made of animal fur. Some things can't even be bought in Yanjing City, they're very rare. I've brought some back for you as a present. Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, saying, looks like you're quite popular, to be able to receive the care of a friend in a place like the land of extreme frost. Mo Qingdi nodded and said, yes. It was also with the help of that friend that I found the ice dragon bloodline. Fang Yan's eyes instantly lit up, he excitedly said, I knew you could do it. You really did it. Does that mean your meridians have been reconnected? They've been reconnected, Mo Qingdi said. You've recovered? I've recovered, Mo Qingdi answered again. That's great. Fang Yan laughed heartily, laughing so hard that he rocked back and forth, tears spilling from his eyes. That's great, our Fang clan has 3 heavenly Dao. Does this count as the #1 clan in Inner Jianghu? Let's see who dares to bully us in the future. Those who bully us, we'll definitely bully them back. Mo Qingdi also laughed, but his smile was a little sorrowful. There were too many grievances in his heart, and too much suffering. There was also the regret that could never be made up for. After his death, the Fang clan had gone through too many trials and tribulations. Fortunately, at that time, Fang Yan did not let them down. Through his own hard work, he made sure that no one dared to say or do anything too outrageous to the Fang clan. However, Fang Yixing's tragic death was a huge boulder that weighed on the hearts of every member of the Fang clan. If only he hadn't fallen into depravity, if only he hadn't become a worthless drunkard. Would that mean that Fang Yixing would not die? Grievances could be poured out, hatred could be purged. But the dead cannot be brought back to life. Fang Yixing was his elder brother, his family. But he couldn't do anything about his departure. Traveling to the Arctic lands was already a journey of death. Coincidentally, he met the ice dragon, and finally returned with his full strength. How much sorrow and unspeakable joy did he experience during this journey? Seeing Fang Yan laughing, seeing Fang Yan crying, how could he not want to be like him, first laughing, then crying? But he couldn't. As long as he was alive, he had to shoulder the burden of the clan. As long as he could stand up, he had to stand in front of Fang Yan, protect him from the wind and rain, and help him kill the demons. He was Fang Yan's guardian angel. As long as he was alive, it would not be Fang Yan's turn to shoulder all the responsibilities of the clan. Their generation had their responsibilities. When he died, it would be Fang Yan's turn to carry the Fang clan's banner. He could understand Fang Yan's feelings. He knew that he was excited, but also relieved. It was too hard for him to walk, too hard for him. He needed someone to share his burden, and he hoped that someone could fight alongside him. In Mo Qingdi's eyes, Fang Yan was still a child. He was his own child. His own child was bullied and wronged outside. This was something that no parent could tolerate. Mo Qingdi looked at Fang Yan and said softly, I will kill whoever dares to kill you. I will kill whoever you want to kill. Chapter 846. When parents go on a long journey, they always bring some gifts for their eagerly awaited children at home. Some parents bring toys, some bring candy, but what Mo Qingdi brought to Fang Yan was endless trust and support. I'll kill whoever dares to kill you. Whoever you want to kill, I'll kill. Fang Yan didn't hesitate at all. As long as he said the word, Mo Qingdi would kill everyone on top of the flying peak without hesitation. Of course, Yi Rou was an exception. If he asked the old drunkard to kill Yi Rou, he would probably be the first to be killed. Killing is not urgent. Fang Yan wiped away his tears, looked at Mo Qingdi and asked, which friend of yours? Did he come back with you? I want to buy him a drink. He came back, Mo Qingdi said softly. There was a warm smile on his face, like a husband thinking of his beautiful wife. In all honesty, this was the first time Fang Yan saw such a smile on the old drunkard's face. He didn't know why, but he felt a little sour in his heart, a little jealous. As soon as he finished speaking, a white shadow darted across the sky and stopped right in front of Fang Yan. The shadow glared at Fang Yan and the rest of the humans in front of him. This little transparent dog sensed danger and hostility. Fang Yan stared at it with widened eyes and asked, "The friend you were talking about, is it it?" "That's it," Mo Qingdi said with absolute certainty. "It's so ugly." Fang Yan was stunned for a long time, then commented. "Pfft." The little transparent dog spat out a bone from its mouth. "Pfft." The little transparent dog spat out another bone. "Pfft." The little transparent dog spat out a third bone. Fang Yan looked at Mo Qingdi and asked, "What does it mean?" "It's talking to you." Mo Qingdi acted as the communication bridge between Fang Yan and the little transparent dog. "You're the ugly one." Pfft. Yi Ro couldn't hold it in any longer. Her lips curled up into a sweet and pure smile. Gong Sunqi's mouth twitched, but when he thought that his master and that martial uncle who appeared out of nowhere were still staring at them, he quickly held back his laughter and put on a coffin face as if this joke was not funny at all. Fang Yan stared wide-eyed at Mo Qingdi and said, "Are you kidding me? How does it know what I'm saying?" Puff, the transparent puppy spat at Fang Yan again, but this time, there were no bones. Puff. It spat out 2 more mouthfuls. This time, Fang Yan really believed it. He bared his teeth at the transparent dog and said, "Stop it. From today on, you and I are brothers. Don't worry, I won't despise you for being a dog." Puff, the ice dragon sprayed water at Fang Yan again. "It doesn't agree," Mo Qingdi explained helplessly. "Are you kidding me?" Fang Yan was furious. He never thought that one day he would be despised by a dog. "I'm warning you, I don't know what kind of dog you are. Now that you're in Yanjing, do as the Romans do. Do what I tell you to do. Otherwise, your life will be..." Puff, a brown fruit core flew towards Fang Yan's face. Fang Yan tilted his head, and the core flew into a large stone in the distance. The fruit box sank into the inner wall of the stone, and only a small, dark hole could be seen outside. This scene made everyone's heart jump. This strange-looking puppy had only casually spat out a fruit pit, yet it had such great power. If it wanted to hurt people, most people wouldn't be its opponent, right? Gong Sunqi looked at the transparent dog, then thought about his own martial arts, and wondered what his chances of winning were if he were to fight with it. It really hurt his pride. The dragon god looked at the transparent dog in horror, and asked aloud, "This is the legendary ice dragon?" "Yes," Mo Qingdi nodded, "it is the ice dragon." The black dragon's eyes flashed, and it looked at the ice dragon like a vulture, full of greed and cruelty. Fang Yan looked at the ice dragon again, and asked, "If it is the ice dragon, then, your body..." Fang Yan's question hit the nail on the head of Mo Qingdi's hesitation. At that time, he was indeed faced with a dilemma. The ice dragon was his savior. If he killed the ice dragon to restore his meridians, then he would be a heartless person. But if he didn't kill the ice dragon, then his meridians would never recover, and he would never be able to leave that land of extreme cold. Later, he found the hidden cave behind the ice dragon's mountain, and inside, he found the remains of the ice dragon clan that was guarded by the ice dragon. He didn't know what expression he had when he saw the ice sculptures, but he clearly saw the ice dragon's angry roar. The 2 men confronted each other in the ice cave for a long time, and then the ice dragon launched an attack. They had engaged in a fierce battle, and even the entire cave where the remains were buried had cracked because of it. The avalanche buried the entire mountain where they had lived for a long time. In the end, they desperately escaped, and Mo Qingdi completely gave up. Because he knew that he had hurt the ice dragon, and he also knew that he couldn't go back into the ice mountain to steal the remains, he was afraid that the deep cave where they fought had sunk deep into the ground, and it would be impossible for them to see the world again. But the thought that he would live forever in the land of extreme cold, and that his family in Yanjing would be in all kinds of danger, made it difficult for him to sleep. Unexpectedly, the transparent dog seemed to have seen through Mo Qingdi's thoughts. One sleepless night, it used its mouth to pull on the corner of Mo Qingdi's clothes, and pulled him into another cave. In that small cave, there were only 3 bodies of the ice dragon, but each one was several times larger than the one he saw in the big cave. Mo Qingdi looked at the transparent dog's eyes, and understood what he meant. The transparent dog whined a few times, and then walked out alone. Mo Qingdi was moved to tears, and used a knife to cut open the body of an ice dragon. The medical fanatic Qin Wujie did not lie to him. The ice dragon's meridians did have the effect of repairing the meridians, because after it entered his body, it melted together with the boiling ice dragon's blood, and then began to repair and open up some of the key areas that were previously injured or blocked. Mo Qingdi slept in the ice cave for 3 days, and then intermittently used the ice dragon's blood according to the method secretly taught by the medical fanatic Qin Wujie. Every time it was used, it was like a nirvana rebirth, and every nirvana was like being burned in a fire. Until he could feel the flow of air, until he once again experienced the power he once had, he decided to go home. He decided to bring the transparent dog home. In this land of extreme cold, he only had this dog as his family. It was the same as him. If he left, then it would be all alone in this world, looking just like a dog. Mo Qingdi and it had a simple discussion, not sure if it understood, but the two of them packed their bags and set off on their way home. Fortunately, it was not too late, and they made it in time. My body has recovered. Mo Qingdi naturally did not want to explain too much to Fang Yan here, and said, it's mainly because of it. As if it understood that Mo Qingdi was praising it, the transparent dog glanced proudly at Fang Yan, and then wagged its little tail as it paced back and forth in front of Fang Yan. Mo Qingdi looked at it lovingly, and said to Fang Yan, it looks exactly like you. Fang Yan felt like he had received multiple blows and insults. Yuan Rou stood beside Fang Yan, and said to Mo Qingdi, welcome back. Mo Qingdi looked at Yuan Rou with a smile, and said, from now on, we are a family. Yuan Rou nodded, and said, in the past as well. Mo Qingdi laughed loudly, and said, in the past as well. Unfortunately, I did not see it. Mo Qingdi, are you done with your nonsense? Black Dragon Li Nanchuan was getting impatient, and his voice was like an unsheathed sword, full of coldness and bloodlust. An old friend is here, are you not going to greet us? Mo Qingdi finally looked up at the Black Dragon, and asked, you hate me? Ga, the Black Dragon's voice was very ear-piercing. He laughed for a long time before stopping, and pointing at the 2 black holes on his face, he said, Mo Qingdi, you can't have forgotten whose work this is, right? I stabbed you. Mo Qingdi had no intention of denying it. He seriously looked at the ugly face of the Black Dragon Li Nanchuan, and said, in the past, we were both candidates for the guardian of the diagram of Tai Chi. In order to obtain the diagram of Tai Chi, you repeatedly attacked me. When I was entering the Monkey Mountain, you tried to kill me on the way, so I stabbed you. Originally, I wanted to stab your head, but I did not expect your reaction to be so fast. At that critical moment, you managed to avoid the temple, and only let me stab your cheek. I always thought you were too ashamed to admit this, but I did not expect you to keep it in your heart, and nag at everyone you see. You have no shame because your face is ruined? Mo Qingdi, the Black Dragon flew into a rage. He struck out with his palm, and a white ball of light flew towards where Mo Qingdi was standing. It was the tempest of wind and lightning that he was an expert in, and it was only a probing attack. The transparent dog lightly leaped, and swallowed the ball of light into its stomach. Gulp! When the transparent dog swallowed the ball of light, there was a loud swallowing sound coming from its throat. Mo Qingdi helplessly looked at the transparent dog, and said with infinite affection, I have told you many times, not everything can be eaten. Chapter 847. After the transparent dog ate the stellar energy wind and lightning bringer, it spat out a few mouthfuls of saliva. Every mouthful of saliva emitted a fire-colored gas that rose into the air. After spitting, it cuddled Mo Qingdi's thigh like a playful child. Its tongue was red from the heat, and white liquid dripped out from it from time to time. It looked pathetic and adorable at the same time. Everyone was astonished by this scene. As one of the three dragons, Li Nanshuan's strength was unfathomable. Although his attack just now was a probing attack against Imo Qingdi, if Imo Qingdi did not counterattack or neutralize it, the energy contained within the ball of light would have torn him to shreds. Such a powerful primordial qi bullet was swallowed by a dog. The so-called adverse reaction was no more than a few mouthfuls of smoky saliva. Then what realm was this dog's strength? The heavenly Tao realm? Or the divine transformation realm that no one had ever reached above the heavenly Tao realm? Although the ice dragon looked like a dog, it did indeed have the genes of the unattainable divine dragon bloodline in its body. Fang Yan knew that even he could not swallow the black dragon's stellar energy wind and lightning bringer into his stomach. After all, he was not a dog. He had a more ingenious way to deal with it. Fang Yan had an absolute advantage in terms of intelligence over the transparent dog that only knew how to act coquettishly. Mo Qingdi rubbed the transparent dog's head, expressing his sincere consolation. The transparent dog glanced at Fang Yan smugly, meaning, "Look at how likable I am, but you can't." Dark Dragon Li Nanshuan stared at the little transparent dog for a while with a scorching gaze. Then, he laughed out loud and said, "Don't underestimate your enemy. I didn't expect you to bring back such a powerful helper from your trip to the land of extreme coldness. Do you want this dog to help you fight in the decisive battle?" Li Nanshuan had no choice but to consider such a problem. If he wanted to kill Mo Qingdi, then he would have to face the combined attack of the man and dog. At that time, he would not be able to deal with them. Why not? Mo Qingdi's voice was calm as he spoke. "If you're willing, you can also find a few dogs to help you in the battle. A pack of dogs is fine too." Puff, the little transparent dog blew bubbles at Li Nanshuan. It still bore a grudge against Li Nanshuan for throwing those disgusting things at it. Black Dragon Li Nanshuan was exasperated. He sneered and said, "I haven't seen you for a few years. I wonder if your 'don't underestimate the enemy' skill has improved. Your skin has become much thicker." He was no fool. Even if he found 100 dogs, they still wouldn't be able to fight against the ice dragon by Mo Qingdi's side. If two heavenly Tao realm experts were to fight, wouldn't he become a laughing stock if a bunch of hounds died beneath their feet? Mo Qingdi glanced at the divine dragon and said, "According to your standards, isn't it shameless to use a sword against an opponent who is barehanded?" Black Dragon Li Nanshuan's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He looked at the divine dragon and said, "Junior brother, it seems that they are clearly going to bully us. If that's the case, you and I will join forces and fight them to the death. Back then, we were able to defeat them with our swords. Now, we can do the same." The divine dragon's face was calm, unaffected by the rapidly changing environment. He looked at Fang Yan with a gentle gaze and asked, "Do you want to continue with the battle?" Fang Yan nodded and said with a smile, "Of course. Then let us continue. Everything else has nothing to do with you and me." The divine dragon gripped his sword and said in a low voice, "That's exactly what I wanted." Fang Yan said. The azure dragon Mo Qingdi looked at the black dragon and said, "Back then, I only managed to pierce your face. I've always felt regretful. This time, I won't make the same mistake." "Kakik," Black Dragon Li Nanshuan laughed maniacally. "Don't underestimate the enemy. Do you think you're still the same? Do you think I'm still the same? You've been a good-for-nothing all these years. Even if your meridians were reconnected, do you think you can return to your peak state? Besides, so what if you've returned to your peak state? Don't you know that everyone in this world can improve? All these years, there hasn't been a day that I haven't thought about it, there hasn't been a day that I haven't worked hard. Even if you're still at your peak state, I'll still defeat you with my sword, not to mention that you can't return to your peak state after your meridians were reconnected. You know this better than anyone else. You're just bluffing, you talk too much." Mo Qingdi grumbled and charged toward the rock that Black Dragon Li Nanshuan was standing on with his spear. His huge body was like a moving hill. Every step he took crushed the hard rock into powder. Halfway through his run, he leaped high into the air. Like a giant god in white descending from the sky, he wielded a sharp weapon that could cut through the sky and stab toward the black figure on the rock. In the eyes of the black dragon, the spear grew larger and larger. It was as if what Mo Qingdi was holding was not a spear, but a tree so wide that it would take two people to wrap their arms around it. It was a giant pillar that supported the southern heavenly gate. But the sharpness of the spear grew smaller and smaller, until it was as thin as a needle. He had no doubt that the spear could easily pierce through his cheek or head, just like the spear that had pierced out 20 years ago. He hadn't changed. He was still Mo Qingdi. The moment the spear struck, it shook the heavens and the earth. Boom! Before the tip of the spear reached the rock beneath Black Dragon Li Nanxuan's feet, unable to withstand the boundless energy, shattered into pieces. There was nothing beneath Black Dragon Li Nanxuan's feet to support him. His body was still floating in the air. His body didn't move at all, as if the rock beneath his feet hadn't shattered and was still beneath his feet. He couldn't move. Once he moved, he would reveal an opening. Once an opening appeared, he would be either wounded or dead. The spear was close, right at the tip of his nose. His head was about to be pierced through by the spear. No, if he were to be attacked by such a powerful force, his entire head would probably explode. The current Mo Qingdi had changed a little from the Mo Qingdi of the past. The Mo Qingdi of the past emphasized elegance and calmness, and would never waste an ounce of energy. His control over his body had reached the realm of divinity. The current Mo Qingdi was even more tyrannical and biting cold. His method of attack was reckless and relentless. The Mo Qingdi of the past could accurately pierce through a person's head with the same spear. It was possible that the person would still be unconscious when they were pierced. But now, Mo Qingdi would brutally smash a person's head, like a watermelon that had been smashed with great force, or a bomb that had been detonated by someone. The aesthetics of extreme violence. The black dragon finally moved. No, it should be said that he had moved a long time ago. How could he tolerate someone pointing a spear at the tip of his nose? Even if he still had a way to fight back, he couldn't tolerate such an insult. What stopped where he was only an afterimage. With a speed faster than the naked eye could follow, he leapt in front of Mo Qingdi. A flash of silver light. The silver light was like a silver sickle, silently slicing towards Mo Qingdi's neck. The spear was tyrannical, suitable for long-range attacks. However, when the enemy invaded the main gate of your family, trying to rescue them would be a burden. Just like the current Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi. His spear thrust was earth-shattering. The long spear was wrapped in an invincible and piercingly cold qi, dragging his body forward. But at this crucial moment, the black dragon Li Nanxuan had sneaked into his inner courtyard and was about to cut off his head. Just like a heavily guarded courtyard, if a thief had already infiltrated the inner courtyard, what was the point of setting up more machine guns and cannons outside? Sure enough, the current Mo Qingdi was in danger of not being able to save himself. Mo Qingdi, the black dragon Li Nanxuan, was holding an illusory long sword in his hand. It looked like a flickering silver light tube. Die, whoosh, the long sword slashed towards Mo Qingdi's neck. It missed. There was no lingering and refreshing sensation of a sharp weapon cutting through flesh. Whoosh, Mo Qingdi disappeared into thin air, then suddenly reappeared. His large hand reached out to grab the blade of the long sword, but the spear in his hand had disappeared. While Mo Qingdi and the black dragon Li Nanxuan were engaged in a life-and-death battle, Fang Yan and the divine dragon Li Nanxuan were not idle either. After the previous exchange, they could be considered a pair of opponents who knew each other well. But this understanding was one-sided and narrow. Fang Yan did not know how many magical treasures and ultimate moves the divine dragon Li Nanxuan had cultivated for decades. Similarly, the divine dragon Li Nanxuan did not know what kind of power the young genius who had just entered the water overflow realm would explode with. In any case, there was an unbreakable truth in the realm of martial arts: the fist fears the youth. While the others were fighting each other, Yi Rou and Gong Sun Qi seemed a little out of place with the atmosphere. Yi Rou glanced at Gong Sun Qi and had the urge to give it a try. She said expressionlessly, "Let's try too." While the others were fighting to the death, only the heavenly Tao realm Yi Ro was watching idly from the side. She was tempted by the sight of the skill and wanted to give it a try. Unfortunately, the experts had all been snatched away by Fang Yan and Mo Qing Di. She only had Gong Sun Chi, a nobody, to choose from. Even if he was a nobody, he was still an opponent. She had nothing to do anyway, and now was not the time to be picky. I will definitely not fight you. Gong Sun Chi secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva and rejected coldly. Fang Yan and I are brothers. You and Fang Yan are about to get married, which makes you my future sister-in-law. How can I attack my sister-in-law? Chapter 848. A good man didn't fight with a woman. Smart men were the same. Gong Sun Chi wasn't stupid. How could he fight to the death with Yi Ro, who was at the heavenly Tao realm? No, if he did that, he would only be beaten to death by Yi Ro. Now, he was especially glad that he had reconciled with Fang Yan, and that they had been friends for a period of time. Although their friendship started with his disgraceful image, he knew that they would definitely be in the same boat through thick and thin together for a long time. For example, now, he would never attack his brother's girlfriend. Even if she stood at the side and insulted him time and time again. Gong Sun Chi could tell that Yi Ro looked at him with displeasure. She wanted to beat him up. You really don't want to fight? Yi Ro was a little disappointed. They were in a heated battle, but her challenge was given the cold shoulder. However, Gong Sun Chi didn't dare to accept the challenge. She couldn't fight alone. She couldn't just let him stand there and beat him to death, right? That wouldn't be a battle, but a torture. I really don't want to fight. Gong Sun Chi said with a serious face. Fang Yan is now challenging one of the three dragons of Hua Xia, the divine dragon. You can imagine how much psychological pressure he is under. At this most dangerous and critical moment, if I were to fight with his wife, wouldn't it affect his state of mind? I will never do such a thing. Otherwise, how can I be his brother in the future? Yi Ro looked at Gong Sun Chi in surprise and asked, You are possessed by Fang Yan? If you want to fight, that's fine. I will stand here and let you fight. You can kill me or cut me up. I won't fight back no matter what. Gong Sun Chi said heroically. Yi Ro nodded and said, You are indeed possessed by Fang Yan. Kacha, Fang Yan's body crashed into a 100-year-old pine tree. The branches of the tree couldn't bear his weight and cracked from the middle, producing a cracking sound. Because the big pine tree grew on the edge of the cliff, after the impact, the roots of the big pine tree began to uproot from the ground, and the whole tree head also tilted towards the bottom of the cliff. Fang Yan leaned against the tree trunk, which had countless cracks on it, and panted heavily. Rustling sounds came from the tree. It was the sound of the broken stones falling down the cliff. If Fang Yan had been careless just now, he would have been swept off the cliff by the demon-slaying sword in the dragon god's hands. At that time, only death would await them. The hot blood in his body was boiling, and the qi that flowed back violently ran amok in his meridians. Finally, it was dispelled and suppressed by Fang Yan's lousy heart-cleansing mantra. He waited until his breathing returned to normal before he pushed off from the pine tree that was about to fall off the cliff. SSSSS, the uprooting of the tree roots became more intense. Then, with a loud rumble, the entire pine tree was uprooted and fell off the cliff. Fang Yan's body landed on a square rock, and once again, he faced the dragon god who was standing with the sword. What was the name of that sentence? Fang Yan asked. Samsara, answered the dragon god with much difficulty. Samsara. Good name. Fang Yan praised, Go and come back, go and come back. The blade has gone, and the sword will has returned. If it wasn't for the heart of Tai Chi's timely warning and quick response, I'm afraid I would have been cut in half by your sword will. The heart of Tai Chi is an ultimate Taoist technique, and there are too many things that make people envious. With a sword in hand, the world is mine. What else in this world can make Mr. Dragon God envious? Yes. The Dragon God answered without hesitation. For example, the heart of Tai Chi and a young body. This body of mine is too old, so old that it can no longer bear the responsibilities it should have. Fang Yan smiled and said, everyone will grow old. Yes. That being said, the dragon god's face was full of regret as he said, but, I'm old, and you're still young. The dragon god was also injured. Other than the injury that Fang Yan used to pierce through his back with half of the Tai Chi light, there were a few more wounds on his chest. His gray robe was messy, and the hem of his clothes was torn. His hair was originally tied up by a black band, but now the band was gone. His hair danced in the night wind, and he looked like an old ghost. Anyone who looked like an immortal would become like this after experiencing a fierce battle. I can't do anything about that. Fang Yan shrugged and said with a smile. He looked at the dragon god and said, previously, I wanted to avenge the old drunkard, so I wanted to challenge you and defeat you. Now that the old drunkard is back, he can do what I want to do. So now, I just want to challenge you, and defeat you, because of what? Because you're a master worthy of respect. Fang Yan said in a low voice. Thank you. The dragon god looked at Fang Yan sincerely and said, you're the most talented young man I've seen in so many years, and the one I look forward to the most, even though you've achieved such results at your age, and reached the water overflow state that countless people dream of, I still want to tell you that this is just the beginning. I think you can go very, very far, to a place that we've never seen before, and that no one has ever walked before. If I'm not here by then, please tell me about it in front of my grave. I don't drink, so don't bring any wine. Bring a pot of tea, preferably Biluakun. I'll drink tea while listening to you talk about the mysterious scenery of that world, it's also a pleasure for the eyes. After a pause, the dragon god looked at Fang Yan and said, I know you're ready. So, from now on, use all your power to defeat me. I'll do my best. Fang Yan said in a low voice. Fang Yan's feet left the boulder, and his body slowly drifted upward. His body floated in midair, and then he stretched out his arms, assuming the posture of lifting clothes while walking in Tai Chi. Fang Yan closed his eyes, and the heart of Tai Chi in his body began to spin frantically. This time, the transparent crystal core began to rotate, and it slowly rotated. It was like the movement of the sun, and it would only move after a few seconds. However, only those who were familiar with the core would know that this speed of movement was much faster than when it was spinning frantically and not moving at all. When it was stationary, it was so fast that it was hard to see with the naked eye, and when it started to spin again, it was so fast that it could be seen with the naked eye. From being seen with the naked eye to being seen with the naked eye, it was a long and tortuous process in between. There were countless people who could not reach this step in their entire lives. In the words of the dragon god, every breakthrough was like an unknown scenery to them. He had seen some of the scenery, and Fang Yan would see it too. However, there were some scenery that only Fang Yan would be able to see. Energy began to spin around Fang Yan's body. No, it should be said that he stirred up the airflow in the air. The surrounding air gathered around him, and then revolved around the rhythm of his Tai Chi core. The air was everywhere. The fallen leaves on the ground, the rocks, the uprooted weeds and small trees, and even the moist soil. They gathered towards Fang Yan in the air, and then revolved around him, wrapping him up layer by layer. Fang Yan became a big Easter egg, and until the last moment of the movie, no one would be able to see his real body. The Easter egg spun faster and faster, and also became bigger and bigger. At a glance, it looked like an alien flying saucer that had just landed from the sky, and had not yet had the time to descend. The flying saucer paused in the air for a moment, and then charged towards the dragon god not far away. Heaven and earth lived together. How magnificent! The dragon god cheered, and then charged towards the flying saucer with his sword. The demon-slaying sword in his hand let out a buzzing sound, and then flames appeared. It thrust its sword straight at the front of the flying saucer. One sword became 2 swords, 2 swords became 4 swords, 4 swords became 8 swords, then dozens of swords, hundreds of swords, thousands of swords, densely packed sword shadows, and the entire flying saucer seemed to be enveloped by the demon slayer's sword. The countless demon-slaying swords were like countless harvesters, harvesting the flying saucer layer by layer. Layer by layer, the outer skin of the Easter egg was torn off by the demon-slaying sword, like an onion being peeled layer by layer. The tip of the sword in the middle stabbed straight into the heart of the onion, and it was determined to stab Fang Yan, who was hidden in the center of the Easter egg, to death. SSSSS, the outer skin was cut off by the sword Qi, and then it once again surrounded Fang Yan, who was like a magnet. Whoosh, they surged in from all directions, wrapping around the dragon god, who was trying to stab into the heart of the Easter egg. Crack! When the eggs were closed, the lives of Fang Yan and the dragon god, who were sandwiched in between, looked like a double yolk egg. Everyone could feel the violent energy inside the egg, as well as the biting cold killing intent that could soar into the sky at any time. Bang! The Easter egg suddenly exploded. The air, the leaves, the weeds, the sand, the stones, the soil, they were like the raw materials for a bomb flying in all directions. Yi Ro, who was watching the battle from afar, was blown back a few steps by the shockwave of the explosion. Gong Sun-chi took a dozen steps back before he could stabilize himself. If he hadn't used the 1,000 caddy falls several times in a row, his body would have been blown off the cliff. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the force of the explosion was. What would be the fate of the two people in the core of the explosion? Whoosh! A dark figure flew out of the egg. He held a long sword in his hand and flew towards a protruding boulder. However, Fang Yan was nowhere to be found. The dragon god struggled to stand on the big rock, silently pondering. After a long time, he sighed softly and hissed, "I've lost." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.